Okay, guys, you all set up? Does everyone have a Pluto SDR?
Yes.
Yes? Does everyone have an SDR? No, you don't have one? You have it, okay, good. So I just want to say that whatever we're going to do today here, you can do with any SDR, okay? We'll be doing with the Pluto SDR. This is going to change a little bit what we'll be doing in terms of capabilities, but you can do with any other SDR. So if you have an RTL SDR, if it works with your computer, if you want to use it, you can, no problem, okay? So first, before I start, I would just like to give a few words to explain more or less what we're going to do today and why we're going to do it. So let me introduce myself. I'm Leonardo. I am from INSA Lyon. Okay, I'm an associate professor. This is Mathieu Kunch, who's going to be with me today, and we both created this tutorial that we're going to present to you. So this tutorial is a new tutorial. We didn't have any tutorials like this one before. And as with all new tutorials, there is a risk, right? So we took this risk. The risk being that we had to choose the level of until where we decided to go. Okay, so for this tutorial, as you're going to see, it's not the same thing as for the other tutorials. We're going to stay at a very lower level. Okay, this is mostly targeted to to people who are really starting up with the SDRs, who probably received their Plutos or have an RTL SDR and have played around a little bit with it, but are not really sure what they're doing with. Okay, in spite of the fact that this is for a beginners group. I am not going to be going very deep into signal processing, okay? Because if we go deep into signal processing, then we'll take the whole thing just talking about maths. And I think this is not what we want to see here today. We want to get our hands dirty and we want to do fun stuff. So this is what we're going to be doing today, okay? So hopefully it's going to be useful to some of you. Maybe some others of you will say, oh, okay, this is like, I've done this before, and I know what this is. So this is not very useful, but hopefully for some of you, this is going to feel very useful, and I hope this is actually the case. So let me talk very briefly about my background. So I work with signal processing and communications. I've done my PhD on cognitive radio. If any one of you heard about this. And then there's Mathieu Kunch, who is also working with privacy. So we actually try to mash up the two worlds, and this is actually what we do in our works. We research each one of us on our own fields, but we try to bring these two things together such that we can get the best of both worlds. And this is actually what this tutorial is going to look like. It's going to be a tutorial which is more targeted for people who are like who don't know a lot about signal processing, but would like to actually start playing around with their SDRs. Okay, I will soon give the word to Mathieu. He's going to do the introduction, but I would just like to say that what we're going to be doing today, very briefly, is we're going to explore the spectrum. Okay, so of course we cannot explore the whole spectrum. We wouldn't have time for that. But the idea is that we will play around with the signals that we're going to observe. Some of them are going to be outside signals. Some of them are going to be inside signals that we're going to produce ourselves. So we have brought here some fun things that we're going to transmit with, cordless phones and everything. And then there's going to be some time for us to set up the signal, so bear with us a little bit. It's not going to be instantaneous. And well, we'll see how that goes, and then you'll tell us in the end if you think it's a good idea or not. Okay, thank you very much. I will give try not to make too much sound on the microphone.
Yes. So good morning, everybody. So I don't know much about software-defined radio. I'm more a network guy, security guy, but I try to do stuff with software-defined radio. What I like to do is to explore the spectrum to analyze signals generated by objects, devices, and try to find flows in the way they work, if they are leaking information, private information, if there are security issues. And this is where Leo helps me. So we're going to start with a bit of motivation, why we want to do that. And we're going to, no, I'm not going to, but Leo will going to present some background on signal processing. And then we're going to dive into the exploration of this spectrum. So, so most of you know that the spectrum, there are many bands that are dedicated to very diverse usage. And this is where we want to go to try to look at not all of them, but some of them, and to find some interesting signals to see what they look like, and try to understand the application behind, and yeah, try to see what we can do with that. Like we said, there are a lot of very interesting signals that we can receive all around here. And we believe that it's a good exercise to try to find those signals, identify them, and at least try to begin the decoding of those signals. One thing that I'm interested in is, like I said, all those privacy and security issues, because you have all those signals going around. Anybody can listen to those signals, and sometimes this can be a big risk. Recently with Leo, we studied some implementation of 802.11, and using software-defined radio, we were able to identify some issues with the way the information is transmitted, how people can be tracked using those signals. And so during the course of this tutorial, we try to highlight some of those security privacy risks when they are. And also, yeah, it's also very interesting to try to decode. I guess most of you have already tried that, try to find signals and just for the sake of it, trying to see where they come from. At least for me, it's something that I like very, very much. Yes, Leo added two interesting pictures here. I'm going to talk about the one on the right. So Bastian Blosel, maybe you know him. So he discovered that there was some traffic lights next to his office, and those traffic lights were, controlled wirelessly. So you guess what he did? He started to listen to a signal, reverse engineered all the protocol, and in the end he managed to understand how it was working. But did he manage to change to control the light?
No, I'm not sure.
Maybe he managed to do it, but he
We're not supposed to say anything.
Yeah, we don't know. On the left, these are the people who managed to reboot this satellite. Yes.
It's a probe, space probe.
Space probe. Okay, so many things like that, and we can go on with many examples. Very interesting example. For instance, we managed also with Leo. We looked at not radio but ultrasound. How we can use GNURadio to analyze signals generated by ultrasound beacons used in shopping centers to track people. This was also a lot of fun. So there are a lot of signals around here. We can do many things. So let's try to do that. Couple of the examples, yeah. But maybe you are already very comfortable with GNURadio, so this is not an objective for you. Understand the basis behind the source, know also maybe a basic stuff. Also, I think this is something that I find very useful, how to recognize the signals, what they look like, to quickly identify what kind of decoding you will need to implement. And also, at some point, I will try to talk about the security implications of those signals, because they are broadcasted in clear, available to anybody. And yeah, try to be curious about the spectrum, because every time we look at it, we discover something new. One word about legal aspects, because we're going to listen to some communications. So there are some laws regarding that. So For those who are from the ham radio community, you may be more familiar than us about those topics. So in France, it's forbidden to intercept wireless communications. This is not clear if you are able to, from which part, if you start to decode, so where in the decoding process is this illegal? But overall, I think, I know nobody was, you know someone who was bothered because he was decoding some signals. So you need to take that into account, and mostly if you know that the signal you are decoding is private communication, you don't want to decode and extract the content of that. This was for France. In the UK, they are pretty much the same regulation. So just be careful about those aspects. Just one word about that. So if you eavesdrop on some communication, you may fall under those laws. But just to give you an example of private companies that are doing that for years, have been doing that for years, and they are still not worried. So those are those wireless tracking companies who are tracking people in shopping centers, in the streets, by eavesdropping on the communication of your device, whether it's Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. So they are collecting those kind of signals, and they are not supposed to because they fall under those cases. They are still doing it. Nobody has been really complaining about that, at least not from the authority part. So I think if we do the same thing just for fun and not for profit, and we are not collecting any information in the end, I think we are in the good direction. We will not be worried about regulation.
So just to complement, there's this saying that if, I don't know if I'm going to say it right, it's not funny if you say it right. If there is a tree that falls in the forest and no one's there to see it, did it really fall, right?
Yeah.
So if you heard a signal and no one knows, did you really hear a signal?
Yeah. We are being recorded, so careful with it.
I didn't say anything. Don't listen to me.
Which definition of
Follow the laws.
No one was listening to the recording.
Yeah. So, but there are, I mean, some of the signals we are going to look at today, they are, I mean, public signals, so it's okay to listen to them.
Actually, we're producing the signals, so these are okay. These are my equipment, and I give you the right to listen to them.
Can I just bring the coaxial cable just to be sure that?
Yeah. Again, we already said that. Don't do anything stupid. We are just here for the scientific aspect, not to eavesdrop on people. One resource, since we are going to look at wireless signals, try to identify them. There is a website, I don't know if you're aware of this one, but I find it very useful for a newbie like me when I don't know what signal I'm seeing. I just go on this website, and this is very well organized. You can look at the bands in which your signal is located. There are samples, information about the modulation, also the application that are behind. This is my favorite website right now. So don't hesitate to go on there if you want to find some information. And this is now that I give the mic back to Leo.
Connected. Let's see. Okay. Sure. Is it okay? Good. Perfect. So, okay, that being said, you've been cautioned. You know now what you're supposed to do and you're not supposed to do. But here we're in a safe zone. Everything is ours, so it's fine, right? So, right now I'm going to talk very briefly about signal processing, such that we bring everyone up to level at least to what we're doing. Again, I suppose that there might be people here who have no idea what I'm talking about. Okay, so very deep basics. This is not supposed to be a deep course, just really so that everyone is on the same page. So yeah, this is just what I said. This is not supposed to be a formal signal processing. course. If you're really interested in doing SDR at some point, I think it's very interesting that you follow some courses. So for those of you who do not have the opportunity to follow a formal course on signal processing, there are some very good online resources that you can follow. One of them is there is this guy at Great Scott Gadgets. So what's his name again? I think he's yeah, exactly. So he has these video courses which presents very basic signal processing to people who want to do SDR. So I really advise you to take a look at these. I mean, if you want to, you can go on the website. I think afterwards you're going to have the slides, so you can write it down right now. What he does is really good. It's really interesting. It's really in depth, to the point where people, for the people who are starting with the SDRs. Okay. There's also this guy at this desktop SDR. He also does some very interesting things, but there are other resources on the web. I mean, if you try to look for them, you will definitely find. And there are people who have been doing tutorials explaining some topics here and there. So if you gather all the information on the web, you will be able to understand some basic stuff. Of course, if you really want to do signal processing, then you really need to understand maths, right? So these things, you can also, for example, if you're not up to date to some math concepts, very easy place to start is Wikipedia, right? There are most of the things are there and you can understand. And then you can also try to find some books which will help you get up to date with that. Most of the things we'll be doing is just simple sine waves and just simple functions. So this is not very, very complicated. There's the FFT, which is a little bit more complicated, but you don't really need to understand it in depth in order to do some fun stuff already. So that's a good starting point. Okay, so first of all, one of the first things that I noticed that people have a trouble on is the concept of time and frequency, right? So I would like just to start by saying that, and I say this, it might sound basic for you guys, but I have students in my courses who don't really understand this. I mean, is the signal transmitted really in time or in frequency? So of course it is transmitted in time, right? We use frequency just to analyze these signals and to understand how they behave in frequency, okay? So these two analyses are very important. Seeing the signal in time and in frequency, it is very important and it enables you to understand some characteristics of these signals, right? So of course, if you look at the signal in time, you have a certain idea of the structure of the signal, where the preambles are, where the payload is, because you see there is some structure. You can see some things which are different from parts to parts of these signals, right? But if you see it in frequency, then you can also see how the band is used and how much bandwidth are we occupying in the spectrum, okay? In some moments, if you look at the signal in time and in frequency, you're even able to say what kind of modulation was used, okay? So it's very interesting to be able to use these two tools to try to understand the signals. You can bring from one to the other using a Fourier transform, okay? For the purposes of what we're doing, we'll consider that the Fourier transform is a black box that takes from time to frequency. It's a little bit more complicated than that. But essentially, we're just viewing signals in time as sums of sine waves, okay, with different frequencies. And when we sum them up, we are able to generate any signal that we want. And this is what the figure is all about. We have a signal here in time, which is a simple sine wave. We pass it through a Fourier transform. In our case, it's also going to be a fast Fourier transform or a discrete Fourier transform. And then we'll get something in frequency like this, okay? When we do a simple tone like this, then we have a Dirac, which means just an impulsion on the frequency, okay? And then the block in GNURadio will look like this, but we'll not be using this block because most of the blocks we'll be using to analyze, they already include the FFT inside, okay? Now we have to talk about analog and discrete signals. So once again, when we're using the SDRs, we're always using discrete signals, right? So we have signals which have been sampled at a certain speed, and then we have these samples which we are analyzing, okay? But of course, when the signals exit the antenna and when the signals arrive at the antenna, they are analog, okay? So there is a moment where these SDRs, they take the signal and they convert from one to the other, which way you're doing your transmission or reception, okay? So there are some mathematical, let's say, laws that govern these things. The most well-known one being the Jean-Michel law, which determines how much samples you can have so you can reproduce the original signal, okay? And essentially what we're doing is this is for very easy to, well, a very easy way to understand. We're taking a signal which looks like this, and then we're just slicing it up in time to get something that looks like this, okay? So we see here as if we have more samples, we can better represent this signal here. The Jean-Michel law being the law that allows us to say what is the minimum amount of slices here that we need, okay? And then, but of course, if you have too many of these, then you need to do a lot of calculation with your SDRs, and then this will take a lot of time. So the very important thing for us here is to try to find the right amount of samples such that we are able to do whatever we want to do behind decoding or synchronizing and everything, right? So yeah, this is what I just said. Yeah, okay. So yeah, this is it. So if you have any questions, by the way, feel free to interrupt me at any time. But I gather that this is very basic stuff. Okay, frequency and rates. So another point of confusion sometimes is that people confuse the frequencies. For example, I'm receiving at 108 megahertz with the rates that I'm using inside of my SDR and inside of my flow graph. So there's a very big distinction between that. So everything is expressed in hertz or megahertz or kilohertz, but they're not the same thing, right? The frequency that we're using, this is the frequency that we're locating the signal at on the radio spectrum, okay? So this is the signal that we're going to connect to somehow in order to find the radio station or whatever transmission that we're looking at. Whereas the band, the sample rate or the band, this will be how fast we're slicing up that signal when we receive it, okay? And one very important thing, sometimes we also make confusion about these concepts, is that the sample rate that you set up on your receiver or on your transmitter does not forcibly equate, of course, to the bandwidth of the signal, okay? Sometimes you need to sample the signal faster than the actual frequency of the signal. And then sometimes you can, for some cases, you can actually sample at the exact same bandwidth of the signal. And of course, that depends on the modulation and the things that you're doing. So sometimes we'll try to set the sample rates at a higher rate, especially now that we're just observing the signals. We just want to look at how the signals look like. So we want to sample them faster than they actually carry information. Okay. And then, of course, if you're sampling them faster, then we're talking about rate conversions, and this is something which is very important in GNU Radio or in any kind of radio for that matter. Sometimes you need to go from a higher rate to a lower rate, or vice versa, if you're transmitting or receiving, and then you need to know how to do that. So GNU Radio gives us some blocks, like these ones here, that enable you to go from a higher rate to a lower rate. Then you need to be careful about these blocks because they consume a lot of processing, right? So many of these blocks, for example, these rational ones here, they try to resample the signal by regenerating the signal and then sampling down at a different sampling rate, and this takes a lot of processing. Of course, if you're downsampling or upsampling by a multiple or a factor, then that's much easier. You just need to repeat or to take out some of the samples, sorry, at a certain rate. So let's see. So of course, one big problem that I see as well with my students, at least, is that sometimes you start with a rate, you finish with another rate, but you don't change the rates throughout your receiver or transmitter. And then, of course, you get buffer overflows or sometimes underruns. This means that a block is expecting a certain rate, but you're giving it a wrong rate, and that will create some problems. So we have to be very, very careful about this. This is like, I would say that, at least for beginners, this is like maybe 90% of the problems that we see. Okay? Great. So, since we're starting with some very simple signals, we're going to be sticking to very simple modulation schemes. Of course, most of you have heard about AM and FM, right? So all of these are analog. But there are also some other kinds of things like this. For example, like phase modulation, which is essentially the same as frequency modulations. Just another way of seeing this. Single sideband, either upper side or lower side. We saw that yesterday. And also pulse position modulation. You can have a position which is going from one point to the other in an analog fashion, right? But what is very interesting for us today here is to see the digital kinds, right? So ASK, which is the equivalent in the digital world of the AM. So you may have many levels which will determine which symbols you have, right? So if in the very extreme case where you have nothing in a certain level, then we call this OK. The frequency shift keying, right? So we were just changing between two frequencies, and we are setting our symbols as two different frequencies. We have PSK, which can be also seen as FSK. It depends on how much rotation you give on the phase. So, and then you have PPM, where you have some positions which are discrete positions, and then you can choose whether this is a certain symbol or another. One very important thing that I need to say is that when we are using these SDRs, you have a complex output, right? So what is this? Especially people who have done math before, they are very confused about having these complex numbers because they don't sound very real by definition. and it's very hard to wrap your mind around the concept of these complex numbers. So essentially, what we have, when we transmit, we have a real signal, right? So it's a signal which is in time and real. And the complex is just a way to represent these signals that are varying in frequency, okay? When we have our SDRs, it will take the signal which is being transmitted at a certain frequency. For example, let's take an FSK signal. So we have a center frequency, and we are varying around this frequency there, right? So when we bring this to baseband, then we have this frequency which is shifted from the transmission frequency down to baseband, which means around zero frequency, right? And then this is something else that my students are like, what? This is crazy. So the thing is that when you bring this down to baseband, then you have negative frequencies, right? And this is just a way of seeing signals that are shifting either positively or negatively in phase. That's it. Okay, so it's actually quite simple. And the way to extract the phase information of that signal, this is why we use complex, right? Because we can then see the modulus and the angle of these signals, and that's where the phase comes from. So it's essentially like this. I mean, it's a little bit harder than this, but it's simple maths. And if you take the time to go down and then really write it down, it's actually quite easy to see. OK, so pause for the water and to reconnect the computer. So far, so good? OK. Well, I'm sure there are some people who are like very high level, maybe are getting a little bit bored. But maybe, I hope there's some other people who are getting started and are actually very happy to see this. OK, so if we want to just to take a look at the signals that are going around us right now, what should we do? So first of all, you need either a spectrum analyzer, a good one, an oscilloscope, a very good one. especially if you want to see signals which are in high frequency. Or you can use an SDR. The good thing about the SDR is that the SDR does some tricks for you such that it transposes from high frequency to low frequency, and then you can use simple ADCs and DACs to analyze the signal, right? And then, of course, if you have an SDR, then you need a way to visualize the signals. And then there are some very good tools out there, like, for example, GKRX, sorry, Q Spectrum Analyzer, Spectrum. There are many things out there which are very interesting, which use several different SDRs and you can use to analyze the signals. Some of them are actually used in courses, actually used for very fancy things. So these things actually can get very good. The good thing about GQRX is that you can also demodulate the signal with very simple demodulation schemes like AM, FM, wideband FM, narrowband FM, upper sideband, lower sideband, and so on and so forth. And they enable you at least to try to listen to the signal and see what it sounds like, right? Sometimes, just by hearing the sound of the signal, I think the ham radio people here know what I'm talking about. You're already able to know more or less what is the kind of modulation that it uses, right? So this is a very good way to start. It's very simple. You connect things and you get started very easily. But actually, what we want to do is we want to use GNU Radio for that. So what I want to show you right now is that by using the very simple tools that GNU Radio give you and some other blocks, you might be able to do some interesting things, okay? So this is just for people who have no idea about the taxonomy of the spectrum. So I show again here the picture that we showed in the beginning, where we have the full spectrum here, up to 3 gigahertz, fully allocated. So you see all these small boxes here is a certain segment of the signal which is taken by a standard, whichever it is. So of course this is very hard to read. You would have to download this, and this is for the US. In Europe we have something which is different. Actually, inside of Europe, maybe some countries have different allocation of the spectrum, right? So when we talk about all the frequency places, right? So we need to know what we're talking about. So we have these here, which, of course, this is changing in log, right? So we have ELF of 0 to 30 hertz, SLF. This is, okay, so this is extremely low frequency, super low frequency, ultra low frequency, very low frequency, and low frequency, okay? Usually, our SDRs cannot go that low. Some maybe can already from around here, somewhere. But this low here, then actually I think you shouldn't be using an SDR for that matter. You should be using something else. And then of course we have the medium frequencies. This is where most of the AM radios are. And we have other interesting things here that you can listen to. Some of them are open, some of them are not. Then we have the high frequency. Then when we get to the megahertz, very high frequency and ultra high frequency. Okay. So this is just so that we have our taxonomy right, and this is where most SDRs can perform. Okay. So you see, most of them are going to be around the 300 kilohertz to 3 gigahertz. Some a little bit higher, some a little bit lower. It depends on what kind of SDR you have and what kind of band you're looking at. Some of them will not be able to listen to the whole thing as a whole. I mean, you have to be able to listen to chunks. Some of them will not be able to tune into some portions of this. So you have to check. It depends on what you want to do with it. You have to check which SDR is good for you. And of course, the bandwidth will say how much of this, how wide can you listen to these signals, okay? Bear in mind that something which is as wide as it is in this portion here will not be the same here because we're changing as log, right? So it's not as wide as. And then, of course, as I just said, your signal will only, your signal observation will only be as good as your SDR. So think about the kind of SDR you want to use with respect to the kind of signal that you want to listen to. Okay, this is very important. So today we're actually very lucky. We'll be using AD Pluto, which is a very performing SDR. Some of you have already maybe played around a little bit with the RTL SDRs. They are also very interesting, but I would say that it depends on you. Whatever you want to listen to, this will determine which kind of SDR you're using, right? So the good thing about the Pluto is that it has a very wide frequency range, and actually you can even make it wider if you set some flags. So I don't know if you have already done this or if you know how to do it, but we can show you how to do this. But everything that we're going to be showing here can be done with any other SDR, okay? So this is what we're going to be targeting today. Okay, I decided not to go down here, even though we can, because it would be a hassle to go around everyone and change the parameters such that the Pluto can go lower. We were thinking about starting with FM, which is the very nice way, the very nice place to start. But we decided to change a little bit the thing, and then just stick to this portion of the spectrum where the Pluto is actually designed for. So we're not going as high as 3 gigahertz, but well, we stay around there. Okay, so let's explore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a signal right now. Actually, I'm going to set up multiple signals, and the first one, I'm going to do it with you. So I'm going to be doing this here on the screen, and hopefully you're going to be following me and doing this on your computer. We'll try to see where we can go. Okay, the first one is going to be an easy one. And then as I present other signals, you start getting more and more autonomous and doing it by yourself. And then so there's, of course, Mathieu, myself, and Otman here. Otman, can you raise your hand? That will be able to take questions and help out if there is a problem with your Pluto, if it's not connecting, if you have a question, if your question pertains mostly to privacy, Mathieu will be more than happy to answer. If it pertains mostly to signal processing, I think that Otman and myself, we can answer, okay? So right now what I ask is that you connect your Plutos to your computer and you try to start it while I start my thing. One thing that I just want to tell you before you start, so I see, so I'll just say this out of my own experience. So I have students who do lab sessions with SDRs. And most of my students, they manage these SDRs, they use them without knowing their own characteristics. So whenever you install and you take off an antenna, you have to be very careful about electricity, right? So if you cause a discharge to these SDRs, you might burn it, like forever, or you might make its performance go very low, okay? So what I would suggest is that before you connect your antennas, ground yourself, try to touch something which is metallic, and then, so disconnect the Pluto, attach the antennas, and then you can start. Whenever you want to change antennas, whenever you want to do anything with respect to the antennas, take care that the Pluto is disconnected and then you're properly grounded, okay? So nothing will happen. So how do you do to ground yourself? Just touch something which is big and metallic. Most of the times this will do. The best way to do is to have, something which goes around your wrist that connects to the ground pin of your power plug. But usually if you touch, for example, the metallic shield of your computer, that should be good enough for most cases, okay? So please pay attention to this because I've seen many SDRs, high-end even, which have been grilled by students because of these kinds of problems, and it will be very sad that you break your SDR in the very beginning of the tutorial, okay? So please, try to connect it, try to test it, see if it works. While you do this, I'm going to connect my stuff here. And then we'll start talking. So I'm not sure if I have a PowerPoint. Oui, mais je voulais un truc que je peux montrer. Ouais. Je vais mettre ici. Il est noté là-bas.
Which frequency is your transmitter?
Sorry?
Which frequency is your transmitter?
I'll give that in a second. I'll give that in a second. I'll give that in a second. Don't worry. Yeah. Just 1 second. So let me just connect my other stuff here so we have everything up and running. Merci. Okay, so what's the problem? Is it okay?
I'm getting something related.
Of course, yes. Can you just take a look at Entrée, USB?
Yeah, it shows up here.
Okay, that's good. Actually, can you just close that? Can you go to USB here? No, up on the top, on the small icon. With the right, yeah. Okay, so this is it. So, oh, okay, I see. I think it's actually attached to your Windows machine.
Oh.
Let's take a look.
Oh, close that.
Yeah, we need to close this. Because if Windows takes control of your
I see,
USB,
yeah. Ah oui.
éjecter plutôt. Let's see if this works. Go back. So it should be.
Maybe eject.
Okay, I got it. So actually, we need to disconnect it. Can you disconnect it, guys? Just one thing. I think many of you are having problems to connect your Pluto. First, start your virtual machine, and then you connect your Pluto. That will solve like 90% of the problems. Okay. So first, virtual machine, boot into it, get everything ready, and then you connect your Pluto. Okay.
Here though, but maybe I'll eject this thing.
Yeah. Okay. So we need to eject it. Let's see. Is it okay? Yeah. Okay, let's take this out, and then let's just reconnect it. So I think now when we reconnect it, it won't get attached. Can you go see here, please? Right mouse button for parameters. Pluto is there. Good. Annulé. Okay, let's check. Good.
Nice, thank you.
Okay, guys. So is it working for everyone? Not yet. Who still needs to make it work? Raise your hand. Okay, let's see. So for everyone who's still trying, disconnect your Pluto from the computer. Open up your VM, and then connect it.
Là où j'ai connecté, j'ai ouvert ça, et après
Ouais.
pour le repérer, pour le pinguer, etc. C'est là moi je fais partie des débutants. Et tout, donc.
C'est pas grave, c'est pas grave. Fais juste play là, on va voir si ça marche. Tac. Ok. Donc alors, il est où? Il est là. On va l'enlever rapidement. On va le rebrancher. Et là, je vais juste voir s'il est bien branché. Tac. Paramètres USB. Plutôt c'est là. Ok. Tac. Ah, c'est bon. Parfois, il faut débrancher et rebrancher. On va voir si ça marche. Voilà, de toute façon, la lumière elle est allumée. Unable to create context. On va retenter. Non. Alors, c'est quoi le problème? Périphérique. Ok, bah, ce qu'on va faire, c'est qu'on va retenter, hein. Débrancher sur un autre. Oui, oui, tout à fait, ouais. Pourquoi ça marche pas? Ça c'est bizarre, unable to create context. J'ai une idée.
Non, on fait un nouveau programme.
Voilà, c'est bon. À partir de là, on pourra tout faire ensemble. Someone else needs help? Everyone has it connected? Good, good, great. Okay, guys. So, is there still a problem here? No? Okay. So can I continue? Great. Okay, so let's just go back a little bit to where we stopped. Now that everything is set up, my side and your side, well, mostly. So just reminding you that if you still have a problem at some point, one very easy way to fix it is just to unplug your Pluto, replug it, and then test. Okay? Some of the Plutos, some of the configuration for the Plutos on GNURadio have an IP address. If you raise it, then it might help. Okay? Usually the Plutos they can be found without any ID. So now that you all have GNURadio open, I would like you to take a look at this. So everything that we're going to be using, well, not everything, but most what we're going to be using can be found in the GNURadio companion software that you have open, instrumentation, and Qt. So when you go there, you're going to see that there are several blocks that are available, right? All of them start with Qt. No, it's okay. Just, yeah, don't worry. It's okay, I'll guide you to this as well. No problem. So what you're going to do is you're going to see there is a Qt, GUI, always, and then something, right? Time sync, constellation sync, frequency sync, waterfall sync, and so on and so forth. So everything we're going to be using are going to be among these tools, okay? So remember, in the very beginning I said that there are two ways of analyzing the signals, one in time, one in frequency. So some of these tools can be used for time analysis, some can be used for frequency analysis. So the ones that can be used for time analysis, the main one is the time sync, of course, as the name implies. So this will give you a sort of an oscilloscope. And then you can actually control it. You can try to trigger it. You can try to change the frequency. You can do many things with that. Well, there's another one which I put here, which is not really time, but let's say it is the constellation sync. So the constellation sync will take in a complex value, and actually it will plot real against imaginary, okay? So you can see how the signal evolves on the real and imaginary plane, if it's turning, if it's not turning, so on and so forth. So you can actually see how the phase is evolving. Then you have the frequency analysis, you have the frequency sync, which will give you just a way to analyze the spectrum. The same thing, it behaves as a lab equipment, so you can change parameters, you can configure the way you want. And then you have the waterfall sync, which actually will be almost the same thing as the frequency sync. The only difference is that the thing is rolling on time. Okay, so you can see the evolution of time of how the frequency evolves. Okay, and then there are some other analysis tools which we're not going to touch on today, but one very interesting one, well, there are the two ones which are the two most interesting is the Qt GUI sync, which actually embeds everything inside. So you have time, frequency, constellation, waterfall, so on and so forth. And then, for those of you who feel a little bit more tempted, it's compiled, but I'm not sure it works on these computers, is the GR phosphor. So this is like an evolved frequency analysis. So you see it looks pretty nice. And it's actually, it keeps a little bit of it stays on here on the spectrum. So you can see how the thing is evolving on time. And you can compare this with previous measurements, as well here with the waterfall display, right? And also, it's easier on the eye because it has a black. It's on black here, so you can actually keep on looking for it for hours and hours without getting tired. So I'm going to go into the details on these tools. Most of them, probably some of these you have already used. But what I would like what I would like to happen is that when you get out of this course here, you know how to use them as pros. So you know how to use all the tools. And you know how to do everything that there is to do with these things. Because they may seem simple at first, but if you know how to use them very, very well, then you can do very, very fancy stuff with it. Okay? So instead of actually boring you with some slides, we're going to do it hands-on. So I'm going to put on the first signal, which is this one right here. So this is the remote keyless system. This is usually used to unlock cars. Most of you have used this at some point in of your life to open garage doors and all these things, right? So this, there's a code in there, right? And then some of them have a rolling code, some don't. Luckily, the one I brought here is a very cheap version, which can turn on these power plugs at a distance. For example, if I turn it on, you have a LED which turns on, and you hear the click of the relay. Right? So this one does not have a rolling code, so we can actually hack it. And this is mine, so we can hack it. Of course, I'm not going to be pressing the button here forever and ever. So this is the very easiest hack that you can do, is you just record, right? Sorry. You can record it, and then you can play it back. And if the system does not have a rolling code, you can actually unlock things with your SDR. For example, let's see if this will work. So right here, I have another computer. Okay, this is not the same one as I'm using for the presentation, with a B200. Just because I needed a second SDR. So I'm going to be transmitting with this one. And actually, it should be already transmitting. Let's see. Maybe not. Okay, so let me just stop and restart it. So there are some things we need to pay attention to. I did this test at a lab bench, and I set the gains. And I'll tell you a little bit more about these gains in a second. So maybe the thing is saturating, and this is why it's not working. Let's see. So it's transmitting all right. Sorry? No, the frequency is okay. Because I pre-recorded the signal, and I tested it. So I'll give you the frequency in a second. Let me get this further away so we can put it here. Let me just try one thing, because I think that this antenna is not the best one. So, actually turns out that it's not working. Which is pretty strange because I tested this yesterday night. Just check on one thing here.
Ah super, non c'est parce que la première fois il y avait la fin, mais en fait la deuxième
Alors, qu'est-ce qui se passe?
Je sais pas. On va. Très étrange. Okay, so let's just continue with this. Sorry, it's not working. I don't know why. Maybe there's some interference on the band. So we'll just play around with this, and then we'll see how it goes. It was working just yesterday night. Very strange. 433.92. It's transmitting. It's definitely transmitting. And then when I try to use this guy, oops, okay, it's very, there's lots of interference, so I just changed the antenna just to be sure. I put an antenna which I'm sure that it's a good antenna. Sorry? There's lots of noise, right? I don't know, maybe, oh, there it goes. Did you see it? Turn on. 433.92. So I think that there's lots of interference in the band, so this is maybe why it's not working. But this is not a problem. We'll just go around. We'll just continue with it. So you have to take my word that it works. This is the demo effect. So basically, what we want, oh, it just turned on, okay. So what we want is we want to set your Pluto to this frequency here. So actually what it would be good for you to do is just follow what I'm going to be doing on the screen, okay? So the frequency is going to be 433.92 megahertz. There's also the 315 for North America. And we're going to use the OK modulation. Sometimes it has other kinds of modulations. So remember, this is the ASK modulation where we have ones, which is a pulse, 0, which there is no pulse. And then what we should see in frequency is something that looks like this, in time something that looks like this. So what I want you to do is everyone open, so if you have GNU Radio Companion already, start a new sheet, empty, okay? Forget about the thing you already had there. Start a new sheet empty, and then let's do it together, okay? So I'm going to be doing this on my computer, and then I would like you to follow what I do, okay? So it's working here. I don't know if you heard it, but it's not always working because there is a problem with the. So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to start with an empty thing like this one here, okay? First things first. So you have the canvas here, right? So this is the canvas where we're going to work in. We're going to put our blocks here. This is the full set of blocks that we have at our disposal, so we can choose any one of these blocks to do whatever we want. This is just an output line here where we can see what's happening. Sometimes it's very important to have this on so you can debug, see if your SDR is responding or if there's an error message. And then you have your variables right here. Some versions don't have it. Some versions do have it. These variables here are the same things as these blocks here, which are variables, okay? We're going to be using these variables a lot, so please pay a lot of attention to the usage of this. And there's this very important variable here which is called options, and these are the options of the top block, which will give the whole configuration of your canvas, right? So if we double click it, we have here the configurations. Let me just get my mouse so it's easier for me. Give me a couple of seconds. Okay, so okay, that's perfect. So here we have all of our options, right? So I advise you, and many people don't use this a lot. I advise you to use it, right? Because then you have a trace of what it was, what it did, who's the author. If someone gets it, they can talk to you if they have some questions about your GNU Radio companion scheme and so on and so forth, right? So you can set the canvas size. You can set the kind of GUI. If you want Qt, if you want WX, and so on. No GUI. If you want priority scheduling, and all these things, right? So right now, I'm just going to set a title, key system.
Just want to script the difference between Qt and WX.
So Qt. So as you saw yesterday, for version 3.8 of GNU Radio, WX is being stopped. So I would advise you using Qt from now on, okay? So just stick to Qt for the moment. So key, you can put the author, whatever you want. And then first thing here is that you always start with this variable here, which is called sample rate, right? Sample rate is the rate in which the whole system is going to work. Beware that when you set the rate here, this does not tell GNU Radio to work at that rate. This is just a variable that will be read by some blocks, and some blocks will behave according to this variable. So the only blocks which will actually behave at this rate here are the blocks which are connected to hardware, right? The blocks which actually use some kind of clocking system to work, okay? So there are a few blocks that do this. If you have hardware blocks like audio cards, radio cards, this will usually have a clock inside of it, and then when we say when we tell it we want it to work at this rate, it will work at this rate. But if we have only blocks which are software, then the computer does not need to behave or to run at this speed. And what happens, it will try to run at the highest speed possible. Usually what this will do is that this will make the computer run so fast that from time to time, depending on the computer, it will get blocked. Maybe you already saw this. So this is why when you have only software blocks and you have no real-time source, the computer will run way too fast, much faster than what you're saying here, and then it will get blocked. So if you want to make it run so if you only have software blocks and you want to make it run at this speed here, you should put a throttle. Okay, there's this block which is called throttle, which is in the mist session, and you can put it, and then it will respect whatever you put here. But this is a variable, just like any variable on a code, right? Là?
La taille de la police.
Ah non, je peux pas. Je peux pas du tout. So what we're going to do right now, we're just going to put 1 mega. Okay? For the moment. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start with the Pluto block, which is this one right here. So you have a Pluto Pluto sink and a Pluto source. Sink is for transmission because it sinks data into, and then the source is for the reception. So we're going to put it here, okay? And now if we double click it, we can access the properties of the Pluto source. So usually when you open the Pluto source, you have these inside. These are the default values. So you see that we have the LO frequency. This is the center frequency of our signal, the signal that we're going to be acquiring. And then we have the sample rate. This is the slicing, as I told you before, of the signal, how we're going to slice the signal up, okay? So what we're going to put here, we're going to erase this value, and we're going to replace this with the variable name that was created automatically. So we have the variable here, which is called samp rate, samp underscore rate. We also can see it here, down here, right? Sorry, I have this thing open, so it will not work. Let me just... So we have the variable name right here, samp rate. And then what we're going to do is we're going to replace this by samp rate. Can everyone see this? I'm sorry about the size of the font. But I actually cannot do anything about it because this is automatically... Well, maybe I can. Let me check. Let me just check if I can. So if I come here... Let me see if I can. So, yeah, I don't think I can. I don't think I can change the resolution. Oh wait. Oh yeah, maybe I can. So maybe if I do this, let's see if this gets any better. Is it better? Okay. Yeah, I think it's better, right? Okay, so next thing, I usually like using variables a lot because if you have one parameter which is spread over many blocks, for example, like the sample rate, then it's very handy to use variables and just change the variables and not open every block and change this parameter in every block. So what I'm going to do is for the center frequency, I'm also going to create a variable. So so let's see, I can go down here and then I can look for variables. They're here, variables, and I'll take a variable and I'll put it here, right? And then I'm going to call this variable FC, center frequency, and I'm going to set it to the frequency of the key system. 433.92 megahertz. Okay, so you see I changed the variable here, but I did not change anything here because of course we need to put the variable name here, FC. Beware that your Pluto SDR is always going to start with a manual gain of 64 dB, right? So 64 dB is a lot of gain. Sometimes if you're transmitting from one point which is very close to the point of reception, this is going to saturate your Pluto, right? So for people who are not aware of how these things work, you can imagine that this is like how high I can scream. So if you're talking to the person who's next to you and you're screaming to his ears, if his ears are picking up way more information than a signal which is way higher than it should, then it's going to sound to him like you're screaming to his ears, right? And then he's going to have a hard time understanding what you're saying because you're saying it so loud. So sometimes you would like to lower this to a value, and I would actually advise you to lower it, for example, to 0 dB and then go up little by little until you find your signal, right? You don't want to have this thing too high because it's going to saturate the signal, and then you're not going to be able to understand the signal correctly. So for the moment, I'll just leave it as is. Leave it at 64 because anyways, my transmission is over here, and you're going to be receiving back to the end. Maybe the people who's here up on the front can lower it a little bit. But for the moment, we're going to leave it like this, right? So Good. So now we have our block here, which represents our SDR. And now we want to see what's coming out of this SDR. So as I said, we're going to come to the instrumentation part here, Qt. And then we have all of our instruments. And let's start very easily with the Qt sync. OK? So the good thing about GNURadio is that most of the blocks come out of the box with sample rate variable in a sample rate, right? So you don't need to change that. This is for free. What we're going to do is we're going to put around the center frequency here, FC. And I'm going to explain to you why we're going to do that, OK? So before we can start, we have to save it, right? So right now it's called untitled, and it's not going to run as untitled, so we need to save it. So let's click on save, and then let's put it here on the on the user space. Let's call it. Okay, I'm having a hard time here. Key system, and then we'll save it. Okay, so this is the very basic stuff you can do to start. So you run it. And then you have something that looks like this running here on the system. Right? So there are some things which actually is surprising. This should be the frequency. See the waterfall? So you have the frequency display, time, the waterfall, time domain, and the constellation, right? So right now, let's just check if everything went well. Well, it looks like it. Let's see. Yeah, everything went well. So right now, it turns out that we have no signal whatsoever, right? So we don't see anything. But there is a signal, right? So the first things we can do is we can try to change the scale of our graphs to see what happens. So first thing here is we see from time to time something appear around here, right? If you look at it. Non, c'est bon. Il n'y a pas de souci. Ouais, so, non, ça va. So, sorry, do you all see it or not? So usually what I do is I press on max hold here, especially if you have intermittent signals, so that it will keep up the maximum that it was saw at some point. Let me just check. You back there, what's your problem? Oh, this is the Qt sync. So if I go back here to our graph, this block right here, Qt sync, Qt GUI sync, right? So it gives you for free all of these instruments right there. So somehow I'm not receiving, let's see. Sorry?
It should look like this.
Yeah. Is everyone receiving a signal? Can you see it? Yes or no? No? Small one? I can probably raise the gain. Let's see. Okay, let me try to raise the gain. Thing is that this antenna is a horizontal antenna, and I think the polarization is not the good one for you guys. So let me see if I can set it up. Yeah, the remote, yes. So if we do the remote, we can see the signal, right? We just check. Oh, I understand what's happening. My computer went to sleep. Okay, now we can see it back. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the power source so that it doesn't go to sleep again. Sorry about that. Okay, so do you see the signal? Everyone sees the signal or not? Do you all see the signal? No, I think this should be good enough.
Yeah, okay.
This should be good enough. Can you all see a signal or not? Yeah, this I think this is interference. I don't know what this is.
Fallait bien ici mettre FC sur la low frequency.
Oui, bien sûr. Ouais. C'est bon? Ouais, c'est bon. Ouais, vous avez là. Sur le ton aussi, c'est pas grave. Okay, so. Really, again?
And I restarted it. I think it was because I made a new.
Oh yeah, okay, let's see. Can you click on the USB here?
I just don't understand the logic because it shows up.
No. This is just a filter. So I think it's not. Let me just unplug it and plug it back again.
I've done this many times.
Let's see.
And then
Can you click on the USB again?
this one.
Yeah. Okay, this is strange. Connect to another one. It should do it automatically, actually. There shouldn't be anything to do. Wait, can I check, please? Oh yeah, it's not working. Yeah, there is a problem here. There's definitely a problem. What is it?
It was working for a long time, but then I made a new. I don't know if it had to do with the fact that I had.
No, it should be working. This is good. This is looking good. No problem. Plug it to another USB. See if it works out. So the filter is there. This is good. Thing is, it should show up here.
Oh, I see.
How come is this thing not working? Okay, let me just check. Hotman, tu peux l'aider ici parce que sa Pluto elle arrive plus à marcher. J'ai juste besoin de continuer. J'ai déjà débranché, j'ai déjà fait plusieurs manips. Okay, guys, so what you should have is something that looks like this. So again, let me just show you how to use this. You can use your mouse scroll to zoom in and to zoom out here, right? To change your axis. Normally you would start with something that is around 1, okay? I'm very close, so I still see the signal when I'm at 1 here. But you might need to zoom in a little bit like this, okay? Also on the frequency display, you should have something that looks like this. So what I advise you to do is to click on the max hold here. What this is going to do is that this will keep the maximum value seen here for each one of these frequencies, okay? So this is very useful where your signal is going on from time to time. So you don't need to be looking at it all the time. You just see the thing taking up the screen like that, okay? So you see that this is the spectral signature of the signal that we're observing. So one of the first things that we notice is that it's very ugly, right? We have lots of spikes here. And this is due to the signal type, okay? The signal is actually very discontinuous, so you have lots of harmonics, and this will generate many of these spikes that you're seeing here. So this is actually quite normal. You're having these things which are quite cheap, so they will do simple transmission schemes that work, and they're not really caring about if it's looking good or looking bad. Hmm?
What kind of modulation?
Yeah, so this is OK modulation, as I said in the beginning. So if we go on to the waterfall, you see that from time to time here, let me just rescale. From time to time, we have our signal that appears here, right? Sorry, this thing here, okay? But of course, as you can see, there's some other stuff going on here, and this is interference. So this is also a good way to see that there might be something around this place right here. We see some signals going on there, and then we see our signals here. But here around the center, there's also something going on. So maybe there's another transmission going on somewhere. Yes, because I want to see a lot of band because I want to see what's happening around it. Okay? Of course, the signal itself does not need 1 megahertz of sampling, right? Because it's very straight. It's a very, very, very thin signal. But this is why I like to start with 1 megahertz, because I see what's happening around, and then I get a feeling of if there are side transmissions that might be interfering, and so on and so forth. Okay? And then if we go to time domain, we see the signal here going from time to time. Okay, it just passes through, and then we see noise again. This is happening because we're transmitting some packets, and then we're not transmitting anymore, so this is why we have this. And then we have the constellation, where from time to time we're also going to see something that gets bigger. So this is the IQ samples. In complex, they're rotating. This is normal. It's a normal behavior, right? So I would like to concentrate on the time and frequency, and for this, I will ask you to do one thing. I'll ask you to close this, so when you close it, it stops, okay? We're going to take out the sync, the GUI sync, and we're going to replace this with a GUI frequency and a GUI time. And then we're just going to check that everything is okay, number of points, sample rates, everything looks fine. I'm just going to change this here to FC, right? The center frequency, okay? And then I'm going to restart this thing here. So now I'll have this view here with two screens, top one and bottom one, okay? There are a couple of things that we notice here, okay? So here we have 2 signals, the red and the blue signals. This is the real and complex signals, okay? They're seen as separate signals here. We see them here, right? Data 0, this is the 0 input. We can have multiple inputs, by the way, the real and the imaginary. We also have this ART 32768. And then down here, we have the frequency view. And then from time to time, this goes up, and then it goes down, right? So this ART thing right here, this is just a trigger, okay? Oh, sorry, not a trigger, a tag. So this is actually some metadata which is attached, and this is included by the Adam Pluto. So right now, we don't care about this. This is just, I think it's the size of the buffer or something like that. So we're just going to take it off. So how do we control this whole thing? Well, we go with the middle mouse button, and then we click it here, and then we have a menu, right? So we can stop, start, and then we can do many other things here. Okay, so we can configure, for example, the blue line and the red line. So we can change the line title, color, width, whatever you want. What we're going to do right now is we're going to uncheck show markers here, and then for the imaginary one as well. And then as you see, the tags will disappear, okay? Second thing we're going to do here for the time for the time view is that we see the signal, it appears, but then it disappears. And this is actually quite annoying because we cannot look at the signal really and really analyze the signal. So what we're going to do is we're going to trigger the start of the acquisition, okay, with a certain condition. So a very simple way of doing that is then just by analyzing the amplitude of the signal. When the amplitude of the signal, you see that when we have noise, the signal is very low. And then from time to time, the signal gets higher. And this is where we have something which is being transmitted. So we're going to trigger it by the amplitude of the signal. And the way to do this is to go here inside of this menu right here, which is called trigger. For those of you who have used an oscilloscope before, you know how to use this, right? You have the modes, free, auto, normal. For the moment, we're going to use normal mode, which means that it's only going to trigger when it sees the condition. It's not going to show anything else. So when we click on normal, it asks us for a level. So right now, I would put something around 0.1, at least for me here, but maybe you have to do something different. And as you see, there is a line over there, and the signal stops immediately. So maybe 0.1 is not enough. Let me put something lower. So if you need to change the level, you go back to trigger, level. Let's put 0.05. So you see now, the signal gets acquired and it stops on the screen. So now you're able to look at the signal and then see and try to make sense of the signal, right? So one thing which is actually kind of bothering me a lot is that the signal is very low. I would like to see a higher signal. So again, you can use the mouse scroll to zoom in or to zoom out and see a better version of the signal. So there you go. But actually, this is not what we're seeing right now here. So sometimes it gets triggered by noise, by the way. So you see that the signal starts here and ends there. It's not very coherent. So what we would like to see is the whole packet. Okay? One complete packet. So in order to see one complete packet, we need more points here on the time scale. The problem is that we're using 1 megahertz. So at 1 megahertz, to have 1 second, for example, we need lots of points. So there are many ways you can go about doing this. One of them is that you can just, so if you're confident that your computer can support it, you can just go right here, click the mouse button again, and then change the number of points. Usually it starts with 1024. Let's raise this to 10,000. So now it triggers again, and now we have whole packets here, right? So now we have 10,000 microseconds. And then we have many packets going on here, actually, right? We can see the packets now. OK? So the thing is, we're actually triggering on one of the packets, but we can see several of them going on the screen. Quoi? 25 minutes, OK. So one interesting thing to do is actually to stop the thing, OK, when you have enough. And then you go inside and zoom with the left mouse button into one of them. Can you see that? Actually, what we have right here, for those of you who have a sharper eye, this is not actually a packet. This is one symbol, right? So we have, as I reminded you, we have OK, right? OK transmission. So either we have nothing, which is a 0, or something, which is a 1. So here, we have a 1, OK? So actually, it turns out that we need more points to be able to see that signal. If you want to zoom out, by the way, just click the right mouse button, and it goes back. OK? So this is our outermost zoom level that we have at this point here. And we see that this is a 1, this is a 0, this is a 1, this is a 0, this is a 1, this is a 0. But we still don't have the full packets. So how do we go about doing this? We have to increase the number of samples, right? Problem is that if you have too many samples here, your computer is going to go very, very slow, because then you have to render many, many points in your screen. So what is the problem that we have right now is that we're sampling at 1 megahertz, a signal which has a bandwidth which is much lower. So of course, the transmission time of the packet is so high that we need many chops of the signal to be able to see it. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our first block, which is none of these blocks here, to downsample the signal into something which is more feasible, okay? So I'm going to show you something that I did here, and then, so let me stop this.
One question, if the center frequency is already the correct value,
Yes.
why do we still see a modulation? Why don't we
Because this is because this is exactly what we're seeing. No, you're actually right. The problem is that we're not actually centered exactly where we should be. There is a slight drift.
Okay.
So the thing is that these things are constructed in such a way that if you have a slight drift, or even a big drift actually, for that matter, it's not that much of a problem because we're just looking at the energy of the signal here. We're not looking at the actual shape of the signal.
Just a diode demodulation.
Yes, so we're just looking at the envelope here of the signal, and since we have an envelope which is different from 0, 0, different from 0, then we don't care. And this is why these things are actually cheap, because they don't care about synchronization, time, and frequency. They can be actually very rough, but who cares, right? So, so what we're going to do is we're going to stop the whole thing here. So let's stop it. And then I'm going to go to this one right here, which I already did some stuff, okay? So this is essentially what I did before. The only thing I did, so I added a new variable. So I still have my sample rate variable here at 1 megahertz, right? And then I created a new variable which I call display rate, which is just for me to display, okay? And now I'm going to bring down my rate from 1 megahertz to 1 to the power of 5, which is 100 kilohertz, okay? Which is still a lot for these kinds of signals, but at least we'll be able to see the full packet. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to pick up a fractional resampler, which you will find here in the resampler's place, right? So you pick up a fractional resampler, and what is this going to do is it's going to change the rate from a higher rate to a smaller rate, or conversely, to a smaller rate to a higher rate. So either it's going to interpolate or it's going to decimate the signals, okay? So the way this works is a little bit more complicated. I'm not going to go into the details because then otherwise we would spend a lot of time on this. But just understand that this brings from a higher rate to a lower rate or vice versa. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to put phase shift because we don't want any phase shift. We put it at 0, and we're going to put sample rate divided by display rate, which will give us the rate of conversion of the resampling, okay? So we're downsampling from sample rate to display rate, always in this sense. Or we could be upsampling from display rate to sample rate, but in that case we need to invert the order here of our division. And then at the output of this, I'm going to connect this to the time sink. Beware, your time sink has sample rates at the sampling rate variable, right? So we need to change that to display rate in order not to have here a problem of rate conversion, okay? So we go from 1 megahertz, we go down by a factor of 10, and then we go down to 100 kilohertz. Did all of you do this? The changes? So if we run, now we should have something that looks roughly better in terms of packets, right? So let me just tell you one thing which can be quite handy, is that in this version here, I have enabled here the sidebars with all the options. So this is essentially the same thing as clicking with the right mouse button, but you can do things quicker here, right? You can, for example, you can set your trigger here right now. You can change the level and so on and so forth. What I'm going to do, not to confuse you, I'm going to take off the control panels here. They can be enabled or disabled at will. I'm going to zoom a little bit on the signal. And then I will set my triggering at something which is comfortable for us. So normal. Level, I will put 0.05, just like I did before. And then you see it stops immediately, and now you have the full packets, right? So before what we were seeing is let me just stop this one here so we can check. We were seeing this before. We were seeing something like this, right? So now we have more signals appearing. Let me just unlock it so I can record a better one because this one is small.
You show again the setup of
Sure, I will. Sure, maybe I went too fast on that, yeah. So, you want me to go back to the
the setup of the frequency sync block.
Oh, the frequency sync block is exactly the same. Didn't change. It's still connected directly to the Pluto source.
The time sync, you change the sample rate.
Yes, I changed the sample rate for display rate. Okay? So now what I did here was I also increased the number of samples. I'm going to show this to you. Let me go back to the running version. So if you see here, the number of points is now 1024. So I put 10, let me just go back to 10,000 as we had before. Right? So there it goes. And now we have the signals here that we can see on the screen. So let me stop this. And then I can go into the detail here on the signal that we have, which looks like this, right? So does every one of you have exactly this on the screen? Because now this is the part where I'm going to explain some interesting aspects of the signal. You all have this? So just stay like this. Don't move. Don't move. You have nothing?
No, but it's possible to compile something is missing, I suppose.
Oh yeah, because you're not supposed to put it K. You're supposed to put E3. E3. And now it puts a K. So let's move on. Please, can I have your attention for a second? So right now we have the whole packet here, right? Do you all see this here on the screen? Do I have everyone's attention? So as I said, this is an OK signal. So we have signal, no signal, signal, no signal, signal, no signal, right? But it looks weird because sometimes we have a thin thing, a large thing, a thin thing, a large thing, and so on and so forth. Well, it turns out that this is an OK signal, right? But it has a sort of a PPM modulation inside of it. So depending on the width of the signal here, we might have a 0 or a 1. So let me show you what I mean. Let me go back to my slides. Let me go to the next one. Oh, this is not what I was intending. Let me put this back into full screen mode. Okay, so actually what happens is the binary 1 is coded with a short pulse and a long silence, and the binary 0 is coded with a long pulse and a short silence. So this right here, short pulse, long silence is a 1, right? Long pulse, short silence is a 0, okay? So now, actually we don't even need to do anything. We can just look at the signal and we know what it means. So here we have a 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, and so on and so forth, right? So you can, so if you're actually very, very interested in this, you can observe many different kinds of signals, and you will see that this part here is always the same. So this must be a header, right? So this header must contain some synchronization symbols, maybe the ID of the receiver, right? Because these things have a switch on the back where you can change the device. So maybe there's an ID here. I don't really know. I would suppose that the 101010 is just a synchronization symbol, and then the 111 here encodes somehow the ID of the device. Right now my device is set to 4, so maybe either these 2 bits here or these 2 bits here encode the device name. So I don't know, maybe I could change and test. But we'll not do this for now because we're actually a little bit short on time. Now we have here the outlet ID. So this will give me which outlets I'm controlling, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So right now I'm on outlet 2. And this is the action, turn on, turn off. Okay? And then now you have here a less symbol, which is just a stop symbol to say that the packet has ended. Well, it's not that simple actually. It looks very simple here, but as you can see, this is still a 01010101. So this is the packet termination. Actually, what you have is that you send, when you press a button like this, you don't send it only one time. You send it like 20 times. And this is like what we call a coding by repeating the packet. So if you lose one of these, you certainly at least hear one of them, right? So if I press, I will send many of these, and then to finish, I will send one of these packets. So this is actually the finishing packet, which says, I'm done. I sent everything that I needed to send. So this is not a device name, this is a dummy device, this is a dummy outlet ID. The real ID is a little bit different than that. And this is the action end, 0, 0. So you have 1, 0 which is on, 0, 1 which is off, 1, 1 I don't know, and then 0, 0 means finish. We have ended, okay? So if you look at what you have, you might see something which is different from this. It's normal because I'm sending many of these packets, okay? So let's go to the second one right now. So we need to speed up a little bit. We finish in, how long do we have? 10 minutes? Oh my God. Okay, so actually I'd foreseen to do other things, but, so the PodSag, this is these pagers that maybe you remember from a while ago, the old between us, not the young ones. So there were these pagers, and then they were transmitted in a certain frequency, and you would get these messages, right? It turns out that they're actually used until today. They're used for some kinds of services. I don't see them. I don't think that they're used for civilian uses. They're mostly like for alarms and important things for like. Yeah, you have some examples of applications: telemetry, nuclear plants, all these things.
So this is the one system I've been looking at for a while. So they are not used anymore by, yeah, but okay, by people like us, or some of us. So they are. I've been listening to those signals a bit in France, and I've identified a couple of applications. The first one is just monitoring systems that are like generators that are isolated, like hydroelectric plants, autonomous ones that send reports. Also, air conditioning system. Yeah, repairs. So they're sending reports when the system is not working properly. So it's mostly industrial applications. Another one is just people receiving messages because they're like hotels. They are sending communications between the workers. Other stuff that I've been seeing is medical, and another one that is. I'm going to end with this one. So medical things. I've seen signals sent to emergency people, sending that there was an emergency at some address, that this was this person. So I have the name of the person, the address of the person, and the medical issue. So I've seen some people that were having troubles, and we were seeing this actually in the clear. So they were exposing medical information about people. And the one that is a bit worrisome is the fact that they were also used by legal, I don't know if it's attorneys, police, or something like that, but we were seeing when someone was arrested by the police and put in jail, they were sending a message to the attorney, and they were saying, okay, this person is at this location and is in custody for this, I don't know, this kind of reason. So you were seeing all this kind of information clear. So I've reported that, and now it's ended. So it seems that so it was only in one region of France, not far from here. They were doing that. And you can also see that there were a group of people in the US US, we made a report on that, and they were seeing a lot of stuff, and I've seen also some of them, nuclear plants. So in nuclear plants, they were reporting some events, maintenance events that were going on in the plant. So I don't think it's critical, but there were some alerts that were reported through this system. So if you listen to this system, you're not supposed to.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
You may.
I'm not telling you to do it.
So encryption is not part of the standard. So there have been some upgrades to embed encryption, but so far a lot of those communications are still in clear, so you can see a lot of messages. Yeah, and that's it. And it's still used today, and it's pretty easy to receive those messages, as Leo will tell.
For
For a nuclear plant, they send a reversal message every first day of the month.
Okay.
I also was wondering how can I see it. I haven't met someone who's been looking for it, and he told me you have reversal messages.
Okay, so je sais pas. Attends. Qu'est-ce que tu as fait là? Ah, je vois. C'est bon. Okay, so we'll try to do it quick because I'm not sure we'll have the time to check. But so actually, the signals are actually quite easy to receive. They're transmitted with lots of power, lots of power. So we have these frequencies here. All of them are used in France. But I would suggest that we stick to the 466.050. But actually, if we look at it with a wide enough input signal, we can see all of them at the same time. For example, if we look at 1 megahertz, we can see all of them at the same time. So I would advise that we look at 1 megahertz of band. These are FSK signals, so they're changing in frequency. We can see that also very clearly at 4.5 kilohertz of difference. And then we have these data rates here, which are possible. And actually, we have one packet which transmits messages from multiple pagers. Okay? So the structure of the packet looks like this. We have a preamble, which is a bunch of zeros and ones in FSK. Then we have batches, right? And these batches, they contain this sync word here, and then some frames. And inside of the frames, you have messages, which can be either address or the actual message itself. And the address, of course, is the number of the pager which is receiving the thing, right? So usually what I would do, but I think we're actually quite short on time, is that we would try to receive these signals. So one thing actually that maybe I can do is I can show you my own version. So we can go a little bit faster. So let me stop this guy here. So let me open PogSag. So you see this is a little bit more complicated. I still have my sample rate at 1 mega. I have my center frequency at 466.5 megahertz. So this is the frequency I said that we were going to listen to. And then I put the output rate here at 20 kilohertz. So the Pluto SDR source is configured exactly the same way. Maybe I put a little bit more of gain here, but I'm not sure we need it. And then what I did is that I see the whole band in frequency, so we're going to see all the signals, and they don't happen that often, but if we stick around long enough, we can see all of them. And then I put here a low-pass filter just to filter the band that we're looking for. Then we pass this through a fractional resampler with a rate of 50 here, so we're going down from 1 megahertz to 20 kilohertz. Remember, the signal spans 4.5 kilohertz. Okay, so 20 is plenty enough for us to have the signal. And then we're seeing this on a time sync. Okay, so let me run this thing here, and let's see what we get. So there is already one there. So let me just, so then again here, what I like to do on the frequency is I usually like to put a max hold, especially for those signals that are not transmitting all the time. So you will see, when there's a transmission, it will appear somewhere around here. So here we are in 466. This might be 466.5. So this is the band we're trying to look at. This is the higher one. You see it there. The other one, ours. Ours is actually very low. And there's the other one here on the side, which is also very low. Maybe we should have concentrated in one of these, because the other one's actually very low. It's not that cool. for me to show the signal. So let me zoom in a little bit and see what we get here. So since it's very low, we might have some trouble to see the signal. Let's wait a little bit more to see if it, so it's there again. See, it gets a little bit more thick here because there is a signal, but I think this is not good. I'm going to go to a higher one, maybe this one here. So this is 175. So let's go to this one. So let me just, this is the 175, okay. So let's go back. So we're going to change the variable. $175, and we can take off the 0, not needed. And then let's run this again. So now we're around 175. Put the max hold so we can see what happens. And now I can zoom in here a little bit. And then we can wait to get a signal. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to set a trigger already. Mode. No, actually not. I'm going to wait for the first version of the recorded signal so I can see how high it is. So it's actually not that high, huh? It's actually quite low to be frank. So this one is going to be a hard one to see. One of the reasons, and this is something you always have to factor in when you try to receive a signal, is your antennas, right? So your antennas might be what's limiting you from seeing the signal. So the signal that comes with the Pluto is a very good antenna for the 433 megahertz. Well, let's be frank, it's not really a very good antenna. So what you can do is you can either raise the gain or you can put another antenna which is more suitable for the band. So let's stick with this antenna for the moment. Let's put this at 0.00, maybe 4, yes, something like that. And let's see if we receive something. It's there. OK, there you go. So it's very, very low, as you can see. So let's, oh, maybe I shouldn't have stopped it. OK, the signal is there anyway. So let's take a look at the signal here right now. So remember that there were zeros and ones in FSK, and then there were like data, right? I know, thanks. So if we look here, we see something which is a certain constant frequency here, right? And then if we look further down, we see that the frequency starts changing. Do you see it here? It's easier to look if we zoom out. So we have one frequency here and another one there. Okay? We're a little bit off band, so the thing is not that beautiful as I would prefer. But so what we should get is something like this here. So here we have the whole packet, which has been received. So this is the header. When it's zeros and ones, we cannot see them because the packet size is so big that the two frequencies are very well close together. But if we zoom in, especially in this region right here where we have the data, then we have something that looks like this. It's not very easy to see here because we have scaling here. But we see we have high frequency, low frequency, high frequency, low frequency, and so on and so forth. And this is how the data is coded. And this is what we have here in time. So we see that we can recover the signal structure by looking at it like this. Okay? So we'll stop here. I actually have to apologize. This is the first time we're doing this thing, so I might have miscalculated the time necessary to see the rest. There are many other interesting things. I had LoRa, and I had DVB-T, and other stuff. Maybe for the next one we'll go faster. But also we lost some time trying to fix the cards, and I hope that the people who are coming back from the other room will have their cards running. So to end, I would like to tell you that we're both open to questions. If you don't want to ask questions right now, if you want to ask questions afterwards, you can come see us, send us an email. If you have questions about security, Mathieu is the guy. If you want to understand why you're not seeing some signal, just drop me an email, no problem. I'm a professor, so I'm used to having emails from students. So you can just send me an email and I'll try to answer in a timely manner. This is what I tell my students as well.
Can you share the
I will.
application
I-
so that we can
I will share the slides and I will share all of my receivers. So you can do it yourself from on your side, okay? Fortunately, you will not have the explanations, but
You need to stay here.
Tanguy is coming.
Yeah, the speaker
Oh
will.
no. Okay. Yes. Okay. So thank you very much.
So there is a small manipulation to do before. Okay, so before we begin the tutorial, I want just everybody to get this file, which is on Jean-Michel site. So for you who are not very familiar with the Linux command, so you create a directory for the lab. You go into the directory, you do wget, and the HTTP address is http://gmfried, like Jean-Michel Friedt, .org, and the name of the file is oot_lab_files.tar. Then you extract the file with tar_xvf, the name of the file. So this will set some files on your virtual machine, and then we can start the tutorial itself. So I've given you some text. I will first do a presentation of what I will do and and present you some slide about the way GNU Radio organize its file. But I want just that to be done before, so we wait for 5 minutes for that to be done. So it's probably a mistake in the name. Yeah, it's GMFried.
No, wrong.
Yeah. Like that. Okay. Yeah, it's ootlab_file. I should have done that before, but oops.
Oh, underscore, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Shit.
Ah, great.
Did you get it? C'est bon? Hein?
J'avais une remarque, c'est pas trop de
Ouais.
we can ping this machine, which or some sort of proxy in between.
GMFried.
I mean, it has DNS.
Yeah,
control.
it's OOT with the capital O.
Oh, all right. Okay. Yeah.
Ça fait quoi?
Que globalement, tu sais, le CMake, des CMake file,
Ouais.
CMake protect. Apparemment, sur l'imprimé, il y a un espace entre le D et le CMake. Après, c'est DCMake.
Mais ça marche non avec l'espace.
Donc apparemment, pour certains, du coup, ça mettait pas le bon truc et du coup, ils se retrouvaient à devoir faire sudo.
Ah ouais? Ah d'accord. Is it okay?
No, it's not connected. It can resolve the DNS, but the TCP connection is not accepted. I think port 80 for some reason is blocked. It seems. Or is this? I'm not sure where. Oh no, that's part of IP address. Yeah. The pipe symbols.
Okay, so see if we say delo HTTP. Oops. Can you type the
yeah, sure. Yeah.
The HTTP address here? GM Friedt F. No, GMM.
GM 3 port.
GM.
Oh yeah, the M is on a different key today. Yes. Yes. French keyboard.
You can switch to the French keyboard if you want.
Yeah, I have Alt Tab. Yeah.
Okay, jimfried.org. .org. Okay.
Oh, there's a comma here. Oh wait, no, there's a comma. That should have it.
No. Yeah, it's a dot.
Yeah. Same connecting to.
Okay, so that I cannot really. Maybe I will find if Jean-Michel is somewhere. So I don't really understand why.
The way I get so the
JM Friedt FR.
JM Friedt.
Yeah, FRIED IEDT dt.org /OOT capital OOT. So wait, I have to get Jean-Michel because some other problem. Yeah. Il est là, Jean-Michel, ou pas? Jean-Michel. J'ai un problème avec un accès au site de Jean-Michel. Tu sais résoudre ça ou pas? Je trouve pas Jean-Michel en fait. Bah ouais, c'est cet ordi là, il n'arrive pas à accéder au tu vois il a un... So did you get the files?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you get? What is the file manager in Debian? If you just want to navigate like this.
We are a bit unfamiliar.
Utilities, desktop, I don't know. Maybe Nautilus? Non. Putain, je suis débordé là.
Ouais, non, mais
Tu essaies, il faut un file manager. So just a word, you don't work as sudo, okay? You don't work as root. Otherwise, it will not work. You just do the command as a regular user. Donc vous avez récupéré les fichiers, c'est bon?
oui, c'est bon.
C'est bon?
Faut installer des trucs spéciaux parce que j'ai pas la VirtualBox.
Bah tu peux télécharger la VirtualBox. Tu as
mais j'arrive. Ouais.
Ouais.
Il y a des trucs installés ou pas?
Non, si tu as GNURadio, je pense que ça devrait marcher. C'est un Linux que tu as?
Ouais.
Non, ça devrait marcher sur ton... Non, je pense que il faut avoir Swig, faut avoir, mais je pense que ça... Ouais. So, is it okay with the lab file?
Okay, so we are two guys here who can help those who have questions and.
So, là c'est bon, là ils ont téléchargé, tu t'as vérifié ou pas? Ok. So it's probably a problem with the machine. Jean-Michel? Je sais pas, ils n'arrivent pas à toucher ton site à partir de cette machine. Donc celle-là, là où il y a PIB. Okay. So I guess everybody has installed the file. So I will talk for a little while, like 15 minutes. And okay, so let's start. They are solving the problem for one machine, but I guess everybody has installed the file on the virtual machine. Okay. So so this lab is about writing out of tree blocks. Out of tree blocks mean blocks that you write yourself in C++. It's nothing brand new. It's directly inspired from the GNURadio tutorial, which you can find online. It's very basic tutorial, but what happens is that often people have never tried that, so it might take some time to understand all the commands and so on. So just before starting, just let me present the team. So I'm Tanguy Risset. I work with Leo that you've seen and Mathieu in Lyon. So we started this, well, the whole story started 10 years ago when we created this Cortex Lab platform, which was a dedicated research platform for software-defined radio. So by the way, Cortex Lab is still living. It's a platform that you can access from anywhere in the world, where you can connect on 20 USRPs, program them with GNU Radio, and then do some experiment in a shielded room and so on. So if you need information about that, we can help. And at that time, Leo came in Lyon and say, well, we have to use USRP and we have to use GNU Radio. So we started GNU Radio 10 years ago. And then I'm teaching in a telecommunication department. And then 3 or 4 years later, we decided to teach GNU Radio to the students. So the idea of this tutorial here, it's not necessarily for developers that want to have very efficient blocks on their GNU Radio implementation, because I will not go through all the optimization that you can do to have a very efficient block. The idea is more to understand the whole feature of building a block, which is very useful when you want to teach students how to program GNU Radio, because students today, they are familiar with computer science. Many of them use Linux, and many of them don't see the relation between the theoretical formula that you can have on signal processing and the real implementation on the machine, because it's dedicated chips that they use. And here you can have them touching the real thing, like demodulation and then synchronization and so on. So the idea of this tutorial is more to understand and to be able to debug when something is wrong, how to do your own block, how to do your own signal processing block. Okay? So I already said you should not work as sudo, you should not work as root. We have managed to install the configuration file on the virtual machine that allows you to be a user and install the thing. So by the way, if you are working on your machine, let me just show you something. So this is the topic, the file that you have. So here, here you have the configuration, the Linux configuration that you need to install on your own machine. It's on the text that you have. Basically, you just indicate that all the files that you will generate will be installed in the local directory, .local directory, which is in your home. Okay, so that way GNU Radio will not write into /usr/ blah blah blah, and you can work as a user. So if I come back to... Qu'est-ce que c'est que ce truc? Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what I'm doing, but okay. Yeah, so I'm assisted by Mathieu and Cyril, who are from Lyon. So please ask them if you have any problem during this tutorial. You have the text. So if you want to start right now, I suggest you would start with section 4, because all the beginning is very dependent on the, so basically, yes. So section 3 is the beginning of the tutorial. What I will do now is I will explain very briefly some concepts that were presented yesterday by Marcus. About the way the blocks are working in GNU Radio. Okay, I have this slide which are present on the conference site, on the tutorial of the GNU Radio GNU Radio Days site. I will not go through all these slides. So these are the slides that I show to my students. It's basically a resume of what is needed when you want to program a new block from scratch. I will not go through all of them because it's quite long. I will just basically insist on the behavior of a block, how a block is working, and just a few slides before, just to make sure that everybody is agree on the. So these are that I will skip. So just to make sure that everybody is aware that GNU Radio has several languages. So you have files in C++, you have files in Python, and you have the scheduler to which you don't have access, but which is at the kernel of GNU Radio. And basically, the file that the blocks that we want to write are in C++, but you can write blocks in Python too. But it's probably better to do it in C++. And usually Python is used to connect the block between them. Okay. So I hope everybody is aware of that. So this is a code of one block. So basically, when you have a GNU Radio flow graph like that, so these things here, this is a graphical interface to GNU Radio. Okay, GNU Radio companion. You are not using that mandatory. So many people are developing using just Python scripts, okay? And basically GNU Radio Companion is generating a Python script. So just to make sure that everybody is aware of that, this graphical interface is using XML. And for instance, here is a code of the XML corresponding to the Python, to the previous flow graph. So XML is not very complicated. It's just a way to express that these blocks are connected in between. And then inside the block, you have the name of the block which are used. And this is what we will do. We will write these blocks, and we will see how to provide an XML interface so that these blocks can be seen into GNU Radio Companion. Okay, so so all that is a little bit too early to talk about that. Okay, so j'aimerais bien le mettre en plein écran, mais je comprends pas comment. Okay. Okay, the first thing is to understand that there is a tool provided by GNU Radio, which is called GRMod tool, which will help you in writing new module. If you do it by hand, it will be a nightmare because there is a lot of files that are generated. So when you create a block, it has to be in a module. Okay, GNU Radio is organized in module, which has blocks. So the first thing is to create a new module. And when you do that, there is a bunch of directory which are created. Each module is organized in the same way. You can go and look at the source code of GNU Radio. You will see that every module has this kind of directory inside. So the C++ code is in the lib directory. The Python contains some test Python file that we will use. And the XML is usually in GRC. So GRMod tool basically will create the module file hierarchy, which are this directory. Then we'll go in this directory and create a block, still with the GRMod tool. And then we will edit, of course, we have at some point to edit the block to do it what we want. And we'll edit the C++ file, and I will show you how to debug this file with the tools that are provided by GNU Radio. So this is basically what you will do. In this example, we create a new module which is called arith. And then, so GRMod tool new mod arith. It creates a gr-arith directory where you have this file and directory. And here is a way with tree. So you can see, for instance, here I have created a arith ×2 block. So sorry, I skipped a little. So the first command was GRMod tool new mod arith, and in the arith directory, I had executed this command GRMod tool add -t general ×2. So it means I created a block called ×2 of type general, and I've asked that it was a C++ block. So there is a question asking, is it C++ or Python? You answer C++, CPP, and then you just type carriage return, and that works. So when you do that, you have in the lib directory the file, where is it? ×2 imp.cc ×2 imp.h, which are the files that you will edit to have your block working. Okay. So this is commented in the text. So what I want to talk now about is the way blocks are working. So you remember yesterday. Ça marche pas très bien les trucs. Yeah.
What variables do we need to create for this block?
So no, but you will follow the paper. It's really explained step by step in the paper. Okay. But just before that, I want you to understand how the blocks are working. So this is a GNU Radio block, okay, which takes 2 input streams and 2 output streams. So you have understood that there is a sort of FIFO here, which contains the samples that will be read by the block and that will be write by the block. So every GNU Radio block has this, but of course in a parameterized way. So the idea is that in GNU Radio blocks there are several kinds of blocks. So there are general blocks and sync block. We'll only talk about general blocks today. And all these blocks inherits from a class which is called GR blocks, and which has the following method. So by the way, it's C++, but if you know C, it should be enough, because you don't really need some knowledge about C++. Everything is already written for you. So the important methods are set history, forecast, general work, and consume. So let's talk first about general works. So Marcus yesterday talked about this method. So the general works is a method that every block has, and which is a method which is executed when the block is called once. Okay, and it has always the same input and parameter. It has 4 parameters, which are which is n output items, a vector of int which is n input items, and 2 vector which are the streams that are inputs or outputs to the block. So I will come back on that. There is this famous forecast method that Marcus talked yesterday. The forecast method indicates to the scheduler how many input items you consume to produce an output item. Okay, so if you, for instance, usually you do a block where for each output item you read one output item. For instance, if you do the sum of these two, you get. So basically, the forecast method will indicate that you read one output item, one input item for one output item. But you have to indicate that to GNURadio, and then consume. I mean, reading the input item on the input file does not consume them. Okay, some data flow language do that. You can read only once, but here no, you can read as many times as you want. And then when you want to consume them, you call the consume function. When you have called the consume function, the sample is not accessible anymore. Okay? Consume, it's like destroying the item. Okay? So if we look a little bit closer to these arguments, so let me switch to this slide, which is okay. So this is the same drawing. Okay, you have the stream. And here, I'm sorry, it's a little bit small, but what I wrote here is input items of 0, 0. So input item is this argument of the work function. So you see that it's a vector of pointer to element of the input streams. So why it's a vector? Because we can have several input streams. Okay. And why it's a pointer? Because it's a pointer on the first element of the input stream. Okay, so this is why we access it with this syntax. Input item of 0, 0. It is the first element of the first input stream. Input item of 1, 0 is the first element of the second stream. Input item of 0, 1 is the second element of the first input stream. Is that okay for everybody? Same thing for the output. Here I have only one output stream, so output item of 0, 0 is the first output item. Output item of 0, 1 is the second output item, and so on. So this is quite important to understand because you will have access to the input and output with this array here. So here I wrote a simple example because we have seen what is input item and output item. Now there are two other variables which are n output item and n input item. So n output item is an integer, and n output item, basically here I put a 1, but basically you never access to this variable. This variable is set up by GNURadio scheduler. But let's say for the moment it's 1. It means that we produce one output item. The n input item will indicate on each stream how many items you consume to produce one output item. Okay, so here I have n input item of 0 equals 4, so it means I will consume 4 items here. N input item of 1 equals 2, I will consume 2, and I will produce one output item here. So if you are in this configuration and you execute once the work function, it means that you will go from this state to this state. Of course, you have consumed the 4 items and the 2 items. And basically, the 4 items have disappeared. Now, input item of 0, 0 is pointing on A5. Input item of 1, 0 is here. And you don't have access anymore to this location. But of course, it's not lost. It's transmitted to the next block, of course. So in that simple case, stupid case, let's say for this sample, I want to sum all these 6 samples, these 4 samples and these 2 samples. Okay. So how do I do that? At some point, I have to write some C code, and what I do is I just accumulate directly in the output item that I want to write, I just accumulate the 4 input items from the first input stream and the 2 input items from the second input stream. Okay, so this is very simple code. Please do not do copy in temporary file and so on and temporary variable, because this is where the execution time is lost. If you do a copy of each input item to the local variable and then copy back to the output stream, then your function will be much less efficient than if you directly copy to the output. Okay, so this is what you will write if you want to produce one sample as output of the block. But GNURadio does not work like that. GNURadio will systematically produce a chunk of output, and this chunk of output, this number of output, is the famous n output items. So GNURadio scheduler invokes the work function for computing a chunk of output. Basically, you have to do that for n output items times. Okay, so if you are to produce one sample here, you will use a certain number of input. If you are to produce n output item sample, n output items samples, you have to repeat the processing for n output item times. So basically, you put a loop for n output item times the same process. It's at the end of the work function. And yes, and it's the same thing. You consume n output item times the number of. So this is the code that you will write in practice. So this is the same loop inside, except that of course I've indexed the right sample that I want to access, because you have as external loop the loop on the output item that you produce. Okay? Yeah.
The number of input items is smaller than the output. Then what will happen for this code?
So basically in GNURadio you have, most of the time you have one output for one input. If you have subsampling or oversampling, these are special blocks, and usually you use a special type of blocks, which I will not explain today. But yeah, if you have basically it means that you have to use another type of blocks. For the moment, we use only blocks that are, so sync block have one output for one input. So most of the blocks are sync block, but you have also decimation and oversampling block, which are another thing. But here we'll stay in that. So if everybody understands this code, I think everybody should understand this one too, which is the usual way we write the code in GNURadio. So you basically have an alias. You put a pointer on each input stream and a pointer on the output stream, and you use this increment notation to consume the items, or to use the items. This is exactly the same code. It's just smaller to write and C-like function.
But is this code faster than the previous?
No. I don't think so. I don't think so with current compiler. When it was invented a long time ago, maybe, but today I don't think so. Okay, so we talked about the forecast function. You remember, forecast is supposed to say how many input items do I need to produce a given number of n output items. And here again, we have a parameter which is n output items. So how many? So this is a stupid example because it does not go with my previous slide. In my previous slide, I needed 4 input items to produce one output item. So this code is valid if you need to consume one input item to create one output item. Okay. In my previous example, I should have written n input items required equals 4 times n output item, because I consume 4 input items on the first, and on the second it's 2. Okay, so here on the lab you will only have to do that, because we do a block which raises a signal at the square, and then it's just one sample, produce one sample. So we will see how to do that. A block that produce one sample from one sample. So just to mention something which is very important is that sometimes, sorry, so this is a complete, sometimes we need more than that. We need to use the current sample and the past sample. If you do a FIR filter, for instance, you use n samples, but this n is shifted, and you keep n minus one of them, and you use the following one. So this mechanism is implemented in GNU Radio as history. We call that history. And basically, if you use a function set history to a given number, let's say 4, it means that you will use 4 sample to produce one sample, but you will not consume this 4 sample. You will just consume one sample. Okay, and you will shift this window. So basically, I don't think we'll have time to experiment that in the lab today, but you have it, the code in the lab, and you have this slide. The way GNU Radio works is that if you put set history to 4, then the input item of 00 points on the first sample available, which is actually a past sample, a sample from the past. The current sample is here, current item. The current item produces this output, and these items are from the past, and these are from the future. Okay, so it's quite, it's not very. I mean, for me, it's easier to understand with this formula that I have a minus when I go in the past and a plus when I go in the future. So what we usually do is that we change the pointer, we add the history, which is a class of the method, and then it means that the pointer is pointing to the current sample, and this is the past, and this is the future, and you can have access with a minus. Okay, so it's just just wanted to show you that, because if you have to be very careful the first time you use the history. And you will have some way to debug your block with what we see today. Okay. Okay, so I think we have all what we need.
Can you access outside of the array? There's no protection.
No, there's no protection. No, it's like C code. Yeah, it's like C code.
You have to be very careful doing the
Yeah. Yeah, but usually the access are not very difficult. You have basically you access the sample and then you. So you have to be careful not to forget things like the forecast function. So if you forget to do that, GNU Radio will do nothing. It will loop infinitely without doing nothing. So this is kind of a bug that we had this morning. So I think that now everybody can start the lab. Let me just. So you have to okay, you have to create this directory. So if you are not familiar with Linux, please ask us. It's not a problem. But you will see that, and that might be a problem for students, to build new blocks, you have to be familiar with Linux. I mean, you have to do it in Linux because it's much more complicated on Windows. So here we will create a local directory which is called .local, where all the GNU Radio files will be installed there. Okay. So you have to do that, and then you have to create a directory where you will work, because you will generate some file, some source file, and basically the produce file will be put there by GNU Radio. And the first thing that we will do once you have created this directory is basically to create a module, which we call tutorial, and then follow the instruction. Voilà. Donc là maintenant je vais passer, j'ai plus grand chose à dire.
Ça sera le micro pour vous si vous êtes proche de personne.
Ouais.
Ça prend de rien à surtout, voire 2 mètres.
Mais je le garde. Ok.
Quand je vous ai parlé, ça m'enregistre.
Hein?
Quand je vous parle là, ça m'enregistre.
Oui, donc il faut que je fasse gaffe à ce que je dis, quoi. Je n'ai pas vraiment l'habitude, mais je vais y penser. Yeah, just.
Compilation errors.
Okay, so you have not. Did you edit the square-imp.cc?
No.
So you have to do that because they generate this code, but they don't know how many inputs you want to your code.
Okay.
So you have to. So it should be written in the tutorial. Okay. So you have to edit this file. Everywhere where there is the greater and lower, you replace by. Yeah.
I just think this is just a comment. I understand it, but like.
Okay.
Doesn't Python have like higher order functions? Because this is just an accumulator or a fold. And
yeah.
It's not a way of just saying.
What I understand is that the way young people are programming today is that they use Python library to do very complex things. And the way we used to program is we do things in C to be very close to the machine to control exactly the efficiency of the implementation. So that's just my opinion. Huh? And I think that in the case of GNU Radio, they want to keep this aspect, especially after that they will use the Volk library, which will have efficient implementation of vector function.
Yeah.
While if they use Python library directly, they have less control on the efficiency, and they might lose efficiency without knowing where it comes from. That's my understanding.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. It just seems like even like I guess C++ doesn't have generics in which you let to kind of like, well, I'm going to write this function. I don't care if it's a float or a double. I'm just going to use.
No, you don't have that. You have this mechanism in GNU Radio, but you have to write a method for float to float and a method for complex to complex, and you have to. There is an option in the block where you say, well, it's float, and you cannot do that in a live way because again. It's not taking the same room in the memory when you're in, and all these access are optimized for. That's how I mean. There are lots of things which are quite not ugly, but painful because it's very.
It's easy to make mistakes.
Yeah, you will see that just to write the square blocks, many people took 2 hours. So. But it's a startup time. Once you know the mechanism, it's easier, and well, C code is still used in many places, so that's a choice.
J'ai checké là, les variables d'environnement,
ouais.
Elles n'y sont pas. Est-ce qu'il faut qu'on lance nous-mêmes le...
Non, normalement,
parce
elles y
sont. Vu simplement GRC bloc path.
Ouais, mais c'est au-dessus, je pense, non?
Ben, je sais pas parce que j'ai fait printemps grep OOT, je crois que c'est ça, hein.
Ouais.
Pour voir par exemple celui-là, OOT module install, quand même vérifier, et j'ai pas trouvé quoi.
Je sais pas quoi vous dire, mais normalement ça doit marcher. Hein.
Ok.
En fait, c'est ce fichier-là qui est sourcé dans le point .bashrc.
RC bloc, OOT module, ouais.
Ouais, je sais pas, ouais. Export, non.
C'est source peut-être.
Non, mais c'est quoi? C'est OOT. OOT module.
Underscore install préfixe.
vais y arriver. Préfixe. Non, mais c'est $.
Non.
Ouais, si, c'est ça, il le connaît. Hein. Donc c'est comment? C'est Echo?
Ouais, Echo.
Donc il le connaît, je sais pas, il le voit pas dans Printemps, mais
c'est marrant. Bon, ok. C'est peut-être mon...
Et avec Env.
Ah si, on peut... Ah non, on va pas. Printemps tout court ou avec...
Ah. Env. grep.
Ah, je connaissais pas Env.
Bah moi j'utilise Env.
Ouais, bah c'est un truc que je vais apprendre, comme ça c'est bien ça.
Ouais, là il y est. Et Printemps.
Ah ouais. Ah bah j'ai appris le truc.
Et bah il y est aussi.
Ah si. Alors qu'est-ce que j'ai fait tout à l'heure?
Je sais pas.
Bon, ok, merci.
Pour la première question, il me dit de lui proposer un modèle, soit une source, soit un puits. Et
non, parce que vous avez pas mis. Non, c'est bizarre. Ouais, mais là en fait on... Ah ouais, c'est bizarre ça.
Un CTRL-C peut-être pour sortir des...
Ah, attendez, GRMod Tool, ah oui. GRMod Tool Add -T général Square. Ah, c'est -T. -T. Voilà. Alors là il faut faire CPP. Voilà.
Et voilà.
Putain, mais qu'est-ce que j'ai foutu?
Bien découpé, on met ça sur
Ou alors what we're going to do right now is we're going to start big. We're going to put 1 megabit. So 1. So I put 1 N, whatever works, 1 K, whatever works. There's always
C'est un langage très joli, c'est un langage pratique qui a également beaucoup d'inconvénients. C'est l'habitude qui fait qu'on évite les écueils.
Là, en tout cas, où il va mettre les destinations, donc c'est aussi une fonction Python de bloc. Et ensuite, il connecte SRC qu'on vient de créer à ton instance.
En fait, vous faites un mini top block comme dans GNURadio Companion et vous vérifiez que... Alors attention, le 6 là, c'est juste pour la 6e décimale. C'est pas le nombre d'échantillons. Ouais. C'est bon. Parce que comme on vérifie des floats, on peut pas tester avec égal. Donc c'est la manière dont ils préconisent de tester et ça marche pas.
Si on a un bloc qui est source, on connecte à 2 blocs en input, on n'a qu'un seul buffer qui est partagé par les 2 blocs. Je suppose que le scheduler ne duplique pas les buffers.
Non, je pense pas parce qu'en fait il peut très bien avoir un bloc qui consomme et pas l'autre.
D'accord, et ça c'est pas
je sais pas en fait. Je sais pas, c'est une bonne question.
C'est ce prérequis pour dire que, notamment pour notre trigger, pour le faire vivre, il fallait qu'on ait une entrée. Et on lui a donné un buffer en entrée. Et donc ça faisait que le scheduler le faisait vivre.
.1, d'autres blocs trigger, et en fait on consommait sans utiliser les valeurs. Donc, c'était un sync SINK,
mais qui était
qui faisait juste pour que le scheduler, qui faisait que transférer un message quand le trigger était, qui regardait une pin sur le FTDI.
Et donc vous voulez savoir si ça duplique les buffers?
Je vais peut-être demander à Marcus.
Je pense que c'est Marcus, ouais. Parce que nous.
Je suppose parce que comme ils sont en const.
Ouais, mais oui, ça paraît très logique. C'est juste que.
Comment ils gèrent l'historique?
C'est juste comment ils gèrent, effectivement, parce que les blocs sont complètement indépendants, c'est-à-dire que ça veut dire qu'ils ont des pointeurs, et quand il faut une espèce de garbage collector pour dire, bah ça y est, toutes les.
Smart pointer, ça marche?
Oui, c'est peut-être ça, ouais.
Le nombre de pointeurs sur chaque bloc.
Oui, c'est vrai, ouais. J'ai demandé à Mathieu s'il sait, mais à mon avis, on ne sait pas. Je pense que c'est Marcus. Il était là ce matin, donc il est peut-être à côté, ouais. Donc ça marche?
Non.
Vous savez 2 fois que vous le faites, hein, donc normalement...
Non, mais justement, j'ai un peu progressé, mais pas ça.
Alors, ça coince où?
En fait, j'ai jamais fait Python, donc là, quand je compile...
Ah non, mais ça, il ne faut pas le compiler directement. Ça c'est destiné à être appelé par le make test, en fait. Donc là, vous avez fait, vous avez créé le bloc, vous avez édité le fichier pour faire un test. Donc, il faut juste comprendre ce que vous faites, c'est-à-dire que vous avez des données sources et le résultat. Et à la fin, vous vérifiez que, bon, là, vous créez en fait un mini flow graph. En fait, vous connectez le square à la source et vous connectez le square à la sync, qui s'appelle la DST. Et après, vous comparez ce que vous attendez dans ça avec les résultats data qui sont le data contenu dans DST. D'accord? Donc vous vérifiez que vous avez bien fait le carré sur toutes ces valeurs-là. Donc ça, c'est le fichier de test. C'est comme ça qu'on débug, une première version du debug du bloc. Donc maintenant, il faut quand même faire le bloc, quoi. D'accord? Donc notamment, il faut faire ça, c'est-à-dire qu'il va falloir faire un répertoire build et faire cmake-d, cmake install, etc. Là, c'est bon. Ouais.
Je ferme ça et je vais là.
Ouais. Okay, just a word that I forgot to mention. So probably many of you are arrived to the cmake command. Okay, so be careful to do the right cmake command and ask people if it doesn't work. And then you are about to modify the square implementation.cc file that has been generated. Okay, so I just want to mention. Je sais pas si on voit. So, excuse me everybody, just 5 minutes. I want to mention that every block has a method as IO signature. Je sais plus comment on appelle ça. As parameter of the block, and the IO signature is a class well, what is not very obvious to understand is that this is the IO signature block. The IO signature class has two integers, which is the minimum number of streams that you want to put to your block and the maximum number of streams that you want to put to your block. So you remember that some blocks you can have one input or two input or three inputs. So it's a parameter. So you have to indicate it if you are ready to have one input or two input or three input. So in that case, you will have int daemon stream is 1 and here 3. And the type of the item that you that are flowing in the stream. Okay, so this is necessary to set up in your C code. And for instance, here, I'm sorry, it's very small, but I have a DC blocker float implementation where I have a IO signature. So I always have two IO signature, one for input, one for output. And this is basically what you will do. You have one input, maximum number of input is 1. Minimum number of input is 1 because you have only one input. Same thing for the output. And the size of the samples are size of float because you manipulate float samples. So this is not very clear in the tutorial. So what you have, the first thing you have to correct in the CC file is the IO signature because the GNURadio doesn't know how many input and output you want to set in your blocks. Okay?
And I'm trying to make the XML file.
Okay.
It's not clear to me where it ends up.
Okay. So you corrected the test file.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you do make XML, it creates the XML file, and then you have to do.
Well, first of all, it asks.
Yeah, you can. Well, yes.
And where does it create the XML?
And you have to do make install. Wait, yes, in build. Make install, and then it's copying the XML file here.
Oh, I see.
And there, if you do reload here, you should see.
What's the namespace it lives in?
It's tutorial.
I clicked maybe too many times. No,
yeah, it takes some time. If you can you go up and close the core?
But maybe I don't have the right. I have to run this script, right?
Which one?
This to set the environment variables, maybe?
No, I think it's okay. I don't see why. Doesn't seem to.
Yeah, it takes a long time to reload.
Oh, no module specified. Ah. So let me try to. Can I quit?
Yeah.
Already exists. Yeah. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Vous parlez en français?
Oui.
En fait, vous avez le fichier QA Python ouais, parce que vous pouvez copier-coller, parce que ça vous évite de tout retaper à la main. Enfin, non, juste le test 001 quoi. C'est juste que ça rajoute, ça peut.
Il est déjà écrit, non?
Ouais.
Du coup, j'ai pas ouvert le bon
ouais, non, ça c'est pas censé être écrit. Donc en fait, celui-là, il est où?
Il est dans OOT Lab File.
Voilà, ça c'est celui que je vous ai donné.
Ah ok, d'accord.
Et celui que vous devez corriger, c'est dans votre grblock /Python. Donc grtutorial Python, c'est celui-là. Et celui-là, il ne doit pas être. D'accord. C'est ça qu'il faut remplacer par ça.
Comment ça se fait avec des commandes, ça, pour remplacer ou faut...
Ah, bah là, vous avez un éditeur de texte. Donc vous ouvrez. l'autre fichier dans l'éditeur de texte. Donc c'est où? C'est OOT, share tutorial, Python, QA Square. D'accord? Donc vous avez les deux.
Okay.
Vous avez celui et puis vous copiez-collez de là à là.
Okay. Donc je remplace le test 001 qui est ici par celui-là.
C'est ça. Ouais. Ça marche? Ouais, bon, c'est pas génial de copier, mais j'ai oublié de le dire, il y a le fichier dans ce que je vous ai téléchargé, fait télécharger, il y a le fichier, bon, c'est pareil.
Dans le cas de, donc si j'ai bien compris, quand on va faire une somme pondérée de plusieurs samples,
ouais.
On lit le pointeur d'entrée jusqu'à 4 samples, mais on en consomme qu'un sample.
Bah, ça dépend, vous décidez si vous mettez n output item égale n input item de 0 égale n output item, ça veut dire que vous en consommez qu'un. De toute façon, vous le mettez à la fin, consume 1. Si vous mettez n output item, n input item égale 4 n output item, ça veut dire qu'en fait, vous pensez en consommer 4. C'est-à-dire que vous pensez en sortir un output tous les 4 inputs.
Et ça, c'est n output item et n input item, c'est réglé en dur dans le code.
N output item, c'est symbolique. Ouais. En fait, c'est GNU Radio. Lui, il va le régler, c'est-à-dire qu'il va essayer de le faire le plus grand possible. Mais à un moment, ça va bloquer parce qu'en fait, ça ne va pas rentrer dans les buffers, ça va bloquer, etc. Donc, il va trouver une taille qui à la fois minimise le temps de switch entre les threads et qui rentre dans la mémoire. Donc, c'est entre 4 et 10 000 en général. Mais ça, c'est symbolique dans votre programme. Ouais. Par contre, un input item, c'est vous qui le fixez en fonction de un output item. C'est vous qui indiquez. Ouais. Alors le forecast sert au scheduler et le consume sert à faire tourner votre bloc. C'est-à-dire qu'il faut qu'il soit cohérent entre les deux, quoi. Ouais, elle est sur le site de la conf là, enfin dans le tutoriel j'ai mis. Ouais. Alors, parce que vous n'avez pas du coup édité le fichier squareimp.cc et il y a un certain nombre de modifications à faire, quoi. Donc là, oula, c'est petit.
Yeah, one question. I have a new version of the GNU Radio.
Yeah.
And when I make the tests, it should be all okay, but this hangs kind of.
Yeah.
Which procedure should I do to?
So Control C is a good procedure, yeah.
Sorry,
and
it's in German. The
yeah,
error message.
I think. Can you show me the C file, the square amp? It's probably because the.
Oh, sorry, it hangs still.
Yeah, so the problem with GNU Radio is that when it hangs, it might be complicated to.
Yeah. Maybe you can come in 1 minute.
Yeah. Okay. Just try to. But it's probably. Did you? Comment? Did you modify the forecast method in the C file? Yes.
Maybe not correctly.
And did you leave the return n output item? You have to leave at the end of the work method. It must return n output item.
Yeah.
Well, so if yeah, so yeah. Maybe you have to reboot the machine, but I can come back and look at the C code. Okay.
Petite question. En fait, moi, donc, j'en suis là. Je l'ai généré, je compile, j'installe. En fait, j'étais pas sûr que ça le génère bien parce qu'en fait, il donne pas vraiment d'infos sur ce qui se passe après. Mais quand je fais le make install, je vois bien qu'il installe l'XML.
Ouais.
Donc c'est bon en fait.
Ouais. Ouais, c'est bon.
En fait, c'est juste qu'il faut que je vérifie dans ma config du GNU Radio Companion pour que ça aille bien chercher dans mon chemin point local. En fait.
Ouais, mais ça, c'est ce qui est.
Oui.
Ah ouais, mais ça, c'est sur votre machine.
Au début,
ouais, mais c'est
voilà,
la variable OOT machin truc.
D'accord.
Ouais. C'est dans le lib.
Ah, ok.
Ouais. Enfin, dans lib, là. Voilà. C'est squareimp.cc.
Ah, c'est ça.
Ouais.
Onko toi kastaus?
Kyllä siis siinä kyllä ihan kasvulukkojen kohdassa.
So does it work?
It's actually showing the well. Let's start the companion.
But did you do make test?
Make test? No.
Yeah. You have to follow the
Follow the
tutorial.
instruction.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what the guys have been telling to me.
Can you go back? Yeah. So yeah. So here, okay, lib. So can you go in the build directory? Oh, sorry. So it's yeah, and if you do make here, yeah.
Make.
Okay, so it compile. If you do make test, okay, so great. So now you want to use it in GNU Radio Companion.
Yeah.
Did you do make install?
Yes, but I did. So it's
Okay.
it's visible.
It's visible. Okay.
But it's showing weird arguments like that. So is this appropriate? This session kind of indicating some sort of error?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's an error.
Aha, okay.
Can you connect the source and a sync to it?
Some sort of.
Yeah, like constant source or whatever. Is it float? I don't remember. Yeah, you have to do it float. Okay, and then sync.
Which kind?
Like null sync of null sync is okay, or maybe no Qt sync so that we can see Qt sync.
Is this okay? Good.
Yeah. Okay.
No, it's not.
Yeah, but
Actually,
you have to
the type
float.
is by default.
Yeah, it seems. Can you click on this? On the there should be a message here. If you click on the. I'm afraid that when you created the block, you answer something when they ask a parameter.
Okay.
You should have that might be the problem. Yeah, yeah. You should have just the enter.
I'll start from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ça marche ici?
Sorry?
So you are working on something else?
Yeah,
okay,
sorry.
no problem. So is it okay?
Yeah, maybe I lost some inodes.
Really?
Yeah.
That's not. I mean, that's not my skills.
Yeah.
Probably ask Marcus.
Yeah, and then, they are gone. Yeah, they are lost. Okay, that's. There's some stuff happened.
Maybe I can ask Mathieu. No, it's okay.
I moved the .local folder to another direction.
Okay.
To save my .local folder.
Okay.
From overwriting, because as the .local. And then all the passwords and stuff in the KDE are not stored in the .local folder. And that's why. Yeah, I think it's. The folder is OT, yeah?
Yeah.
And then I go
okay.
to
Okay, can you go in lib?
Ça marche, j'ai compris pourquoi. En fait, c'est parce que, bien sûr,
Yeah.
je suis dans un cas.
And can you edit the square imp.cc file?
On va initialiser les variables d'environnement. Non, c'est à travers l'environnement Python.
Okay, can I just sit at your place so that I can
Sorry, it's yeah, that's the best.
So that's okay. So that's missing, you see?
Okay.
So basically what you have to, if you don't do that, GNURadio is stuck because it doesn't see any, it doesn't consume any input items. Okay, and then it's so okay.
En fait, j'ai compris pourquoi. C'est parce que j'utilise PyBombs. PyBombs, il réinitialise les variables d'environnement.
Ah oui, ouais, je connais pas PyBombs en fait.
Voilà.
Ouais.
Donc en fait, ce que j'ai fait, c'est que j'ai modifié la config. Il y a un fichier de config qui permet de mettre directement le chemin vers où aller chercher les blocs.
Et c'est pas OT préfixe machin truc là?
Non. Alors, en fait, je crois que ça doit être juste.
So now you just have to do make and as you did previously and make test should work, I think. Local block path. So ça c'est un truc spécial Pibomb.
Non. Bah, en fait, là justement, c'est moi qui l'ai rajouté. Ça, c'est le fichier de config du GNURadio Companion qui permet de lui donner des trucs sans passer par les variables d'environnement.
D'accord.
Parce que vu que moi, c'est réinitialisé les variables d'environnement.
Where was this in the... Did I
Yes.
didn't read it?
You didn't read it?
I didn't read it.
But you that the same make was okay. Same make was dot local as okay. So if you do make test now, it should work. Yeah.
Okay.
So the test is failing because I put a mistake in the test file, just to check. Yeah, in the pattern file, so you can correct the pattern file and it will be okay.
Okay.
Pardon.
Ah ouais, un bloc par...
Ça marche? Ouais, ce que j'ai oublié de le dire, en fait on pouvait copier-coller des fichiers qui étaient, mais bon, ça vous avez presque fini. Donc ça marche le test?
Du coup il faut trouver l'erreur, mais...
Bah ouais, il faut trouver l'erreur. Ouais. C'est où que ça compile? C'est où le...
Il est là, c'est celui-là.
Donc la première erreur, donc en fait vous n'avez pas modifié le fichier là?
Non, pas encore.
Ouais, c'est sûr que ça ne peut pas marcher. Donc il y a tous ces trucs là qu'il faut remplir. Là où il y a des chevrons quoi. Ça, il ne faut pas oublier de le décommenter. Je vais le faire tout de suite parce que sinon après ça fait boucler le truc. D'accord, donc ça il faut le remplir avec les valeurs que vous voulez. Et puis ici il faut mettre pareil, changer les types.
Comment on fait pour les remplir?
C'est-à-dire comment on fait pour les remplir?
Bah, ça veut dire quoi là
Donc ça c'est ce que je disais tout à l'heure, le IO signature, ça prend un nombre min de stream en entrée, un nombre max. Donc vous c'est 1, vous voulez mettre qu'un seul stream en entrée, d'accord? Donc c'est 1. Ici c'est 1. Et le size of là c'est la taille du type d'échantillon que vous voulez mettre. Donc c'est float. D'accord.
Okay.
Donc ça c'est float. Voilà. Bon, il faut faire pareil là. Et ici c'est pareil. Là c'est float. D'accord, c'est le type des échantillons que vous manipulez. Et là après il faut faire le code. La boucle en C qui est marquée dans le truc là, qui calcule les échantillons.
Okay.
D'accord. Ça marche?
Bah ouais, je me pose la question quand même, Marc. Est-ce qu'on met size of float ou GR underscore float?
Non, c'est float.
D'accord.
Je crois qu'il n'y a que complexe, non? Où il y a GR underscore complexe.
D'accord, je sais pas.
Ouais.
D'accord, ok. Ok, bon, ben, ouais,
Par contre, ça, il faut pas oublier de le...
Ah ouais, de le décommenter, ok.
Ouais.
Ah. Tiens, ah bah oui, j'ai pas, ok.
Voilà.
Ok, mon nombre d'input, ah mince. Ouais, virgule du coup.
Il y a d'autres trucs, il y a même tout. Et si vous descendez, ça c'est bon. Ok, ça c'est bon. Et descendez encore, consumit, ouais, c'est bon.
Ok, super.
Donc là, ouais.
Allez, j'ai créé une autre contrôle normalement, donc c'est les builds. Et là, je. Ah oui, c'est make, puisque j'ai déjà fait ce make.
Voilà. Donc il est un peu lent. Donc là, il manque un point virgule ou une parenthèse là.
Ligne 50. Ah bah celui-là, ça doit être plus haut. Ouais. Ici. Ah, qu'est-ce que j'ai fait là?
Là, il manque une parenthèse là.
Ah oui, parce que c'est GR bloc. Ah oui, d'accord. Ah oui, on comprenait pas, je pensais que c'était une ligne d'indépendance, mais il n'y a pas de... Ok. Encore 45, 82.
Alors on va voir.
Ici, hein. Alors 2, 45. J'ai encore dû effacer un autre truc.
Ouais, en fait, il manque encore une parenthèse. Parce que ça ferme celle-là, mais ça met.
Oui. Ok. Mais du coup, ici, il en manque peut-être pas. Ah si,
ouais,
là aussi.
Il en manque
une
là
là
aussi. Ouais.
Oh, j'ai été brutal, hein, vraiment. Donc, ici, une pour fermer ça, et ça pour fermer globalement le truc. Ouais, d'accord. Ah oui, j'avais pris ça pour des lignes indépendantes, donc... J'avais fait qu'en Python un module comme ça, mais je ne savais pas trop ce que je faisais. Là, c'est bien, parce que ça a une approche structurée, un peu mieux.
Donc là, ça compile. Donc ça veut dire déjà qu'il compile. Et après, on va pouvoir le tester. Donc il y a deux manières de tester. Soit à l'informaticien, c'est-à-dire on met des trucs en entrée et des trucs en sortie, on vérifie que ça correspond. Donc ça c'est le make test qui va vous faire ça, c'est le fichier Python que vous avez rempli là.
Ah oui.
Et puis après le deuxième test c'est en signal quoi, dans GRC avec des.
Mais du coup, est-ce que c'est comme pour les Python, les airblocs, il faut redémarrer ou pas alors?
Oui, je pense qu'il faudra redémarrer, ouais. Mais là faites make test déjà pour voir ce que ça donne.
Alors ici, make test.
Voilà.
Ah oui, puisque le make file a été écrit, oui, d'accord.
Voilà. Donc là, il y a un test fail. Donc si vous faites ctest-v, c'est ce que je mets dans le code. Donc
ici,
voilà, ctest-v, vous allez voir le message. Voilà, donc le message, il dit ça. Donc c'est pas évident à lire, mais moi ce que je veux vous faire voir, c'est que...
le almost equal, là.
Voilà, 32 différent de 32.25. D'accord. Donc j'ai mis une erreur dans le fichier de test. C'est pas 32.2, c'est 32.25 qu'il faut mettre. Et c'est pour vous faire comprendre que c'est vraiment, c'est pas évident de comprendre que l'erreur vient d'un problème d'environnement plutôt que d'un problème du bloc. D'accord. Donc c'est juste que
oui, d'accord.
Voilà. Et il faut savoir trouver les messages d'erreur. Donc là, en fait, si vous faites ctest-v, vous avez l'affichage du script de Python qu'on a vu tout à l'heure, et vous pouvez mettre des prints dans ce script pour débugger vous-même votre script, d'accord. Donc là, si on édite donc c'est dans Python, voilà, QA Square, voilà.
Ah oui, là je pourrais mettre des prints aussi.
Voilà, vous pouvez mettre des prints, et dans le ctest.v, vous les voyez. Donc là, vous voyez 32.2, si vous mettez 32.25, le test va réussir et c'est bon.
Et là, le 6, c'est quoi?
Alors 6, c'est les décimales, c'est jusqu'à où il teste la précision.
C'est bien ça, je connais cette fois. Ouais, d'accord.
Donc ça, c'est GNURadio qui suggère d'utiliser ça, quoi. C'est pas moi qui l'ai inventé.
Je pense que c'est bon, j'ai le truc XML et tout là.
Ouais.
Mais par contre, je le trouve pas dans GRC.
Tu l'as relancé ou pas?
Ouais. Il s'appelle Square?
Ouais, il faut que tu aies un bloc tutoriel. Il y a des fermes corps. Enfin, ferme ça. Ouais, tu l'as pas. Alors attends, fais voir, je vais juste regarder un truc. Je veux bien m'asseoir si ça te dérange pas. Donc là, il l'a installé. Donc cette variable-là, tu l'as ou pas?
Au début, j'avais fait.
Ouais, le petit machin truc là. Alors, outil, module, install préfixe. Tu n'utilises pas les bombs? Alors ça c'est un truc, c'est compliqué. Je vais demander à Mathieu, parce que c'est lui qui est spécialiste de ce genre de trucs. Où est-ce qu'il est?
Mathieu.
J'arrive. Tu finis, j'ai une question pour toi là-bas, parce qu'il ne voit pas son bloc dans son GRC, c'est sur sa machine, et il a mis les bons environnements.
Ouais, je me demandais ici, là, donc j'ai mis print, on est ici, et effectivement, on le voit, mais on le voit deux fois.
Ouais, je n'ai pas très bien compris. Je n'ai pas très bien compris pourquoi on le voyait deux fois. Je
me demande si, ouais, je sais pas, si ça fait pas. Ouais, c'est marrant. Bon, en tout cas, c'est une précision intéressante de savoir qu'on peut mettre dans le test son propre code.
Ouais, alors après on peut faire aussi des tests en C++.
Ah oui, j'ai vu qu'il y avait des fichiers.
Ouais, moi j'ai pas exploré ça, mais bon, voilà, c'est chacun selon ses...
Ouais. Et il y avait une question que vous posiez, mais c'était dans un bloc, parfois on peut sélectionner le type d'entrée. Comment est-ce que...
Alors ça c'est le type d'entrée, des paramètres de bloc, c'est ça?
Non, enfin le...
Ah, le type de... soit c'est des floats, soit c'est des entiers, c'est ça?
Oui, voilà, c'est ça.
Et ben c'est typiquement ça c'est un paramètre de bloc.
Un paramètre.
Je crois, attends. Non, je suis plus sûr, je vais te dire des bêtises. Mais là, il faudrait regarder sur les tutoriels GNU Radio. Ouais. Ça doit être expliqué à peu près correctement. C'est vrai que je ne l'ai pas expérimenté, des blocs avec... parce que en fait, dans cet exercice-là, on fait un bloc avec un paramètre, c'est-à-dire on fait un QPSPA, soit avec le Greycode, soit sans Greycode.
Ah oui, d'accord. Ouais, donc là, il y a un petit menu qui apparaît.
Il y a un petit menu, voilà. Donc je pense que c'est pareil, mais je ne suis pas tout à fait sûr. Je ne suis pas tout à fait sûr parce qu'en général, quand il y a un bloc où il peut être en float et en complexe, il y a deux méthodes work. Il y en a une qui s'appelle _ff et il y en a une qui... Ouais, c'est des fichiers différents. Donc c'est encore un autre mécanisme. Mais ouais. Ça compile?
Ben, le problème c'est que ce fichier-là, je n'arrive pas à retrouver et là finalement je l'ai créé et il est vide.
Il est vide?
Ouais.
Ah ouais. C'est le point CC, mais c'était le point PI qui était limité tout à l'heure, non?
Il y a un problème là. Donc, en fait,
Comment il a créé le square?
vous avez fait une erreur, une faute de frappe quand vous avez tapé la commande new module et il a créé un module, un bloc qui s'appelle scare.
D'accord.
Donc ça ne change rien, il faut juste ici mettre scare.
Bon, ben, je vais le refaire avec square.
Ben, c'est comme vous voulez. T'as trouvé?
Oui, ça c'est bon.
Et c'était quoi?
C'est parce qu'il faut lancer GNU Radio Compagnon dans un shell pour que les variables d'environnement soient prises en compte.
Ah,
Quand
d'accord.
t'as dit de mettre, je ne me rappelle plus dans le texte, tu dis de mettre les variables d'environnement dans le bash profile ou dans le bash RC?
Non, là, sur la machine virtuelle, elles sont mises dans le bash RC.
Ah,
Il y a un source dans le bash RC.
Et il faut que ça soit dans le profile.
Ah ouais?
Bah, le bash RC, c'est censé être ce que tu fais à chaque shell interactif.
D'accord. Et là, il
Donc,
lance
un
GNU
shell
Radio comme ça, là,
interactif,
clic.
C'est pas exécuté. Et donc,
D'accord.
quand tu passes par un menu, ou quand c'est un script ou n'importe quoi, et ben c'est pas exécuté. Donc tu l'as pas assez. Si tu mets dans le profile, tu l'as tout le temps.
D'accord. Bah, ça, je vais le...
En fait, normalement, dans le bash RC, c'est les trucs genre les alias que tu mets ou des trucs vraiment liés à la terminale.
Ok.
Ouais. Tu le connectes à des entrées et des sorties. Alors,
Une source constante, par exemple, et un Qt sync.
Ja, dat is toch vrij standaard van C++, maar oké. Ja, oké. Ja, maar oké. Dus de gray code.
So the square is working and you are...
Square is working.
Great,
Yeah.
great.
Dus gewoon die andere member variabelen.
Oh, great. It works?
But in the blocks?
Oh, I'm afraid that's a real problem. Can I sit at your... Because I'm afraid that when you type create a block, you answer something when it asks if it had a parameter. So that's a real problem because I don't see anything created. I had the same problem with another guy, and I'm not sure.
Because the other windows,
Yeah.
the properties window is open at the end. Yep.
Dit is de klasse. Kijk, je hebt een namespace. En volgens hebben we de implementation. Je heeft een underscore input. En die input zet de constructor. Oh, hij zit nu opeens ook dat general work.
GNURadio is running in the...
Yeah. No, but I'm not sure I will be able to solve your problem here. I'm afraid that let me ask. Ça fait 2 fois que j'ai le problème et je comprends pas, je sais pas résoudre le truc. Where is it? GNU Radio, it's here. Donc tu vois, il y a ça. Et quand tu regardes, il y a ce message-là. Param, type. Mais pourquoi il y a ça? Le XML n'est pas défini?
Il n'a pas été modifié en fait. De base,
Ah.
tu as une définition standard. Maybe I should...
Yes.
By default, when you create the block, there's XML that's created, right? With like generic stuff, and it's like telling you should put this there, but it's not the proper syntax. And it doesn't define the proper way of doing some output. So you have to either rewrite it yourself or use the make XML for commands to.
So you did that?
Yeah, I did.
GR mod tool.
And then you have to rebuild and reinstall.
Make XML, but no, I have to specify square. Is it the name is square? And then you have to type yes here. Did you do that? Okay. CD build, make and start. Okay. So, yeah.
Il n'y a pas besoin de redémarrer, je ne savais pas, mais le refresh.
Ouais, mais ça marche pas toujours.
Ah ouais?
Ouais, des fois, je sais plus, il y en avait un autre, là, ça marchait pas, donc j'ai fait relancer, ça marchait. Donc c'est toujours bien d'essayer de redémarrer avant de chercher le bug ailleurs. Où est-ce qu'il est passé, le gars? So does it work?
J'en suis là à peu près.
Ok. Bah, du coup, le carré, ça marche?
Comme je ne l'ai pas tout à fait, je vais peut-être faire un copier-coller de la solution.
Bah, en fait, là, ce que ça dit simplement, c'est donc il y a deux cas, soit on utilise le grey code, soit c'est pas le grey code, c'est-à-dire c'est pas exactement le même codage. Et en fait, pour chacune des valeurs, quand on a 1, on renvoie ça, 1, -1, on renvoie ça, enfin voilà, il y a un codage, là c'est un autre codage, c'est juste, c'est pas très important. Pardon.
Create a simple flow graph, vu que je suis pas encore extrêmement à l'aise, j'avais, voilà, mais qu'est-ce que je peux mettre comme...
Eh ben, par exemple, on fait...
tester mon square complètement.
Le make test, il marche?
Oui, ça marchait.
Donc là, vous faites, par exemple...
make test, je précise qu'en fait, j'ai changé le test pour le faire ajuster.
Oui, c'est exprès. Donc constante source, on va pas mettre 0.
Je me suis demandé si c'était qu'il y avait un problème de précision avec GNURadio et qu'il fallait se limiter à une... Mais c'était pas logique de se limiter à une décimale.
Non, l'idée c'est que comme ça, tout le monde rares sont les personnes qui arrivent à corriger tout seul comme vous l'avez fait. Donc du coup, je teste où est-ce qu'ils en sont chacun. Donc là, on met constante source, on met par exemple 2. Et puis on fait un...
Il n'y a pas moyen de rechercher... Ah oui, si, il y a moyen de se rechercher parmi les blocs.
Ouais, c'est là.
Ah oui, d'accord, très bien.
Sync, donc on va mettre un Qt sync. Voilà. Par contre, ce qu'il faut mettre, c'est un throttle parce que sinon ça va aller trop vite. Donc ça, vous savez un peu, non?
Non, mais oui.
Le throttle, voilà, ça sert à... Parce que comme là, il n'y a aucune contrainte sur le rate, il va aller le plus vite possible et en fait, il va bloquer votre machine, quoi.
Ah
oui, c'est hyper chiant. Après, on est obligé de tuer le... Enfin, quelquefois, on est obligé de redémarrer.
Ok. Mais Linux, c'est pas capable de...
Donc voilà,
il est quand même... D'accord.
Je le sauvegarde, où est-ce qu'on est là?
J'ai mis tout dans Adrien.
Voilà.
Dans OT bloc s'il faut, ou dans... Oui, très bien.
Peut-être 2. Voilà. Ouais, donc là, attendez, ce qu'il y a, c'est que... pourquoi ça me... Alors, c'est pas ça qu'il faut mettre, c'est un Qt time sync, alors. Voilà.
Attends. Oui.
Voilà. Et là, alors oui, voilà.
D'accord, donc on a
régler.
les 3 et du coup l'affichement
Ouais.
c'est logique. D'accord, ok.
Est-ce que vous n'avez pas utilisé GNU Radio avec l'interface du coup?
Pour l'instant, j'ai juste, j'avais conçu, enfin,
Ouais.
marqué que ça compilait, mais j'ai pas justement, je savais pas faire le.
Parce qu'en général, les gens, ils ont plutôt utilisé l'interface GNU Radio comme ça, mais ils ont plus de problèmes avec les commandes Linux pour
D'accord, non, je
modifier.
suis à l'aise avec Linux, ça c'est pas un problème, mais par contre, je suis newbie en GNU Radio, donc.
D'accord. Donc bon courage, parce que quand on fait du traitement du signal et qu'on apprend l'informatique, c'est bon, on y arrive. Quand on fait l'inverse, c'est pas facile. Hein.
Je suis aussi à l'aise
Ah,
avec le traitement
d'accord.
signal au général, je suis nouveau sur le
D'accord, ok, ouais, bon, c'est bien alors. Là, ça marche?
Je découvre un peu les deux, moi, Linux et GNU Radio.
D'accord.
Donc,
Là, il faut mettre un. Ça faut enlever les chevrons.
Ah ouais, les chevrons, on les enlève.
Pareil sur le float aussi, il faut enlever les chevrons. Les chevrons, en fait, il ne connaît pas.
Et c'est bien comme ça en fait, c'est 1.
Ouais, c'est un, voilà. Là, il faut décommenter la partie N, voilà. Il faut juste laisser N input item de 0. Voilà, ici enlever le commentaire et mettre un point virgule. Voilà.
D'accord, donc là, ouais. Okay.
Là, on dit simplement que quand on produit N output item, on va consommer, enfin, on va avoir besoin du même nombre de trucs en entrée.
Ouais, d'accord, ouais.
Donc ici, pareil, alors là, il va falloir mettre float partout. Ouais. Et après, le do signal processing, il faut mettre le petit bout de code qui est là.
Ok, ouais, ça marche. Voilà.
Il marche le bloc?
Et du coup,
ouais,
quand je fais less, je comprends pas en fait ce qui m'affiche.
Ouais, c'est ça la difficulté de GNU Radio, c'est qu'il faut comprendre. Donc là, il vous dit, ouais, là il y a un problème. Là il y a un problème. Alors attendez, je vais regarder le code. Enfin, en gros, il dit. Il y a un des deux streams qui a un 0, donc alors il y a plusieurs possibilités. Soit ce que vous pouvez faire, c'est vous pouvez aller dans le Python. Voilà.
On est en AZERTY.
Ah ouais, vous êtes en AZERTY. Je vais switcher parce que c'est des points. Merde. C'est comment? C'est Shift.
Au pire, vous pouvez prendre celui-là, je crois qu'il marche aussi. Le clavier AZERTY.
Ouais. Oui, il doit fonctionner. Voilà.
Alors, vous pouvez juste éditer donc ./Python. Ouais, /QA Python. Ah. ./Python. QA Python. Donc là, par exemple, on peut mettre. Ici, ce qu'on va faire, c'est qu'on va afficher résultat data pour voir ce que ça nous donne et comprendre pourquoi ça ne marche pas. D'accord? Donc résultat data, c'est le truc qu'on compare à ce qu'on attend. Voilà, on fait ça. C'est test.b. Donc là, ce qu'il affiche, ouais, il affiche failed. Donc il y a un problème. Donc il y a un problème. Donc je vais regarder le code C. Essayer de comprendre pourquoi il y a un problème. Parce qu'il a compilé, vous dites le code C. Alors ça, oui, ça c'est bon. Ça c'est bon. Je peux m'asseoir à votre place 2 minutes? Ah, mais c'est peut-être dans le Python en fait. Alors attendez, je vais quand même vérifier.
Parce que le Python, vous l'avez copié-collé ou vous l'avez écrit à la main?
Copier-coller.
C'est quand même bizarre qu'il... C'est quand même bizarre qu'il ne puisse pas afficher le résultat là. Il y a un problème, j'arrive même pas à afficher le... Donc en fait, il n'arrive pas à faire le truc. Donc effectivement, votre truc, il répond 9. Il répond 9 et après il répond 0. Alors comment ça se fait? Ah, for i égale 0 ou i inférieur à 1. Mais non, mais c'est n output item ici. Vous n'avez pas suivi ce que j'ai expliqué? Donc évidemment, si vous faites que le premier échantillon, il n'y a que le premier échantillon qui sort, il est là, puis après vous avez des zéros. Donc il faut produire n output item échantillon. Donc il y a encore un problème.
Là, il nous l'affiche toujours le premier.
Ouais, il y a toujours un problème là. Je sais pas.
Tu sais que
Ah mais j'ai pas sauvé. Quoi?
c'est 30,25 le résultat.
Ouais, je sais, ouais. C'est moi qui l'ai, c'est exprès.
Ah, non, mais parce qu'il y en a chez qui ça marche, il paraît.
Ah bon?
Directement. Ils ont dû se tromper en fait.
Voilà, ah non, c'est fail encore. Putain, mais je comprends pas. Ah ben. Ok. D'accord, donc il y avait ce bug là. Du
coup, après, il faut le recompiler et là, c'est bon.
D'accord.
Donc, ce qui est difficile, effectivement, c'est de savoir si le bug il vient du fichier de test ou du fichier Python. Ça peut venir des deux, enfin, ou du fichier C. Donc, il faut faire attention à ça, quoi.
Est-ce qu'à la fin,
Ouais.
donc on part manger pour 12h40.
Ouais.
Est-ce que tu peux leur dire qu'il y a des questionnaires devant les cafés et en bas au stand d'entrée pour qu'on ait un peu de retour?
Ouais, mais on va leur distribuer, non, on l'a distribué dans l'autre groupe.
Vous voulez distribuer le...
Ouais.
Voilà. Et ici, il y a tout cela. Si on n'a pas assez, tu me le dis, j'en ai à l'entrée encore.
Non, c'est les autres qui l'ont rempli.
Ce qui est un peu dommage avec le remplir, c'est qu'on pose la question pour les deux autres tutos encore. Ah oui, ils l'ont rempli, mais ils l'ont pas rendu.
Je sais pas. Bah non, ils ont dû le garder, ils vont le rendre. Ouais, par contre, il faut leur demander de le récupérer, on va leur demander. Il y en a assez ou pas? Il y en a assez?
Oui, je pense.
Oui, il y en a assez, je pense.
Hein?
Il va y en avoir 25. Donc on finit dans 10 minutes, quoi. Enfin, je leur dis dans 5 minutes, voilà. Un bug?
Ouais, mais c'est les bons gros bugs de Swig.
De Swig?
Qui te donnent zéro information.
Tanguy, c'est à déposer ici.
Bah, faut les... Ouais, Jean-Michel, bah ouais.
Mais du coup, c'est qu'il doit y avoir juste une bête typo quelque part qui fait que ça compile, mais que derrière, ça fait pas la jonction avec Swig et Python. Et du coup, derrière, le ça lance pas.
Square, Swig, make.
Il n'y a pas d'autres gens qui sont tombés dessus.
Non, ça me dit rien. Fais voir le fichier Python. Tutorial / square. C'est bien tutoriel le nom du... Ouais, tutorial. Ouais, alors ça, je vais te dire... C'est dommage parce que vous étiez presque arrivé.
Qu'il y ait des espaces l'un avant l'autre.
Non, c'est pas ça. Pourquoi il est... Pourtant c'est ça définit bien. C'est pas...
Ah oui, non, mais c'est qu'il y a un...
On va parce qu'il y a la solution là normalement ici. Bah, on va faire diff. Hein. Fais diff avec. Ouais, bah, on va regarder si. Fais un diff, il ne devrait pas y avoir 36 000 différences, quoi. Donc, j'étais parti pour boire un coup. Ouais, solution S et Q, enfin ouais, j'ai peur que ce soit pas là.
Si on fait la même chose avec... T'as pas le QA?
Si.
Au-dessus.
Il est au-dessus, ouais.
C'était en orientation.
30-25 ou 30, 32.
ça devrait pas changer grand-chose. Enfin, ça devrait pas se faire cette erreur-là, quoi, en fait, tout simplement.
Ah. SQR. Ah oui, c'est ça. C'est SQR, ouais, c'est ça. C'est pas... Attends, regarde là. Fais voir le Python.
L'autre Python ?
C'est Square.
Ouais, mais ça, à la limite, c'est pas gênant, quoi. Et surtout qu'en plus, ça crache là. Ça crache à l'import.
Ça crache quoi ?
À l'import.
Ah oui. Ben là, j'ai peur qu'on n'arrive pas à trouver. Qu'est-ce qu'il pourrait y avoir ? Ce serait au moment de créer le bloc. À moins que Mathieu ait une idée, mais... Je vais juste faire un truc history.
J'ai recompilé, enfin j'ai détruit ce build, j'ai recommencé.
Ouais, j'ai un mode tout le mode moitié. Ouais, non, je pense que vous avez fait les trucs dans l'ordre, mais on n'arrive pas à trouver.
J'ai fait juste le CPP et entrée.
Ouais. Ouais, parce que la première fois, vous n'étiez pas dans le répertoire GR tutoriel.
Ah, ça peut faire des choses.
Mais pourquoi
Tu l'avais fait où?
CD GR tutoriel, GR mode tool. Ah, parce qu'attention, parce que tu as fait new mode tutoriel dans... Ah, mais là, ça a dû échouer parce qu'il existait déjà. Et après...
Ah non, mais non, c'est new mode d'abord.
Oui, mais elle l'a fait 2 fois.
Ah.
En fait, vous avez créé un module, vous êtes allé dans le module et vous avez recréé un module.
Et pourtant, on le voit pas.
Oui, on le voit pas, je pense qu'il a échoué, mais ça n'a pas dû... Après, vous avez fait GR mode tout le moins. Ouais, c'est quand même bizarre, hein, regarde, parce qu'il y a quand même... Ce qu'il y a, c'est qu'effectivement, je pense que le fait d'avoir fait 2 fois... C'est bizarre que vous ayez créé 2 fois GR... Enfin, moi, je comprends pas cette suite de commandes, quoi. Je comprends pas comment c'est possible. Ah, mais c'était New Mood. Le premier, c'était New Mood. Donc là, ça a échoué. Donc ça a échoué. Donc là, c'est bon. Là, c'est bon. Ça a échoué. Ça, c'est bon. Et ça, c'est bon. Donc là, normalement, ça devrait être bon. Non, c'est vraiment un bug. Je comprends pas. Et si tu switches... Ouais, non, mais il n'y a pas de raison, hein, il est bon son... Enfin, tu vois, si tu switches par la solution... Ouais, enfin, tu sauvegardes son fichier pour qu'on ne le perde pas, mais...
So we are about to finish. It's 20 past 22 to 1. So I'll stay here a few minutes and we go down to the lunch. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you were able to compile your first block. But don't forget to fill the small questionnaire so that we can improve. This afternoon, yes. I think so, but I mean, it's not my responsibility. Maybe si on peut laisser, je sais. I will ask Jean-Michel. He's not far from me. So.
A bit stuck with this error, but he says not declared the. I just make this. Okay. I inserted also in the header inserted the private class for the gray code.
Yes.
Also here I have put fill the private constructor, and also here I don't remove this part. Just insert the next one with this one. Okay, but it's also the.
Okay, but you will have to fill something in.
Where? Because
I have. In the general work, you will have to do the.
Also here I have to, because it's not a new.
Yeah, but okay, you will have to fill this function. The general work function always have to have the code, but here the compilation problem is that it doesn't know this.
This implementation. This says that the first error, because also there is another one. There's to express the constructor one. But in this case, the QPS for the code, for the memory class, not in signature. Okay, so this is in this case is for the.
Is it
this is something I don't understand.
Is it the type mismatch between the .h?
Yeah, because in the constructor it says char, but then in the function it says unsigned char. It's not the same. But I mean because in the the documentation says unsigned char. But
okay. Can you show me the .h file? I think unsigned char and char is the same size, so it's not a problem. But
okay, but save this.
Yes, and my QPSK demo .h.
So edit .h. I put bool degree, but because I only have to insert the degree code, the private. No.
You have also to declare the function here.
Okay. In the private.
Yes, you have to copy from the C file just the.
So I have to include in the header how, because also this is the tutorial. Other one.
Just the.
Because.
No, it's not.
No, it's just like this.
Okay. Do you have download the file, the solution file?
Yes, I have it. Yes,
so if you look at the solution .h, okay, you have. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
If you don't declare it, it's the .h.
Anywhere, so
no, but because this is C++, so.
Yeah, it's not my field.
Okay.